Nobody warns you that ancient blessing comes with a smell profile. It's not candles and silk robes. It's warm manure, sour milk, wet wool, and a permanent haze of flies that act like they pay rent. And then, one day, you wake up and everything you thought you knew about God gets dragged into the street and stomped on. You don't just lose stuff. You lose your ability to stay polite. Hey guys, tonight we begin with Job, the richest man you've never envied. We're going to step right into his world at the exact moment everything still looks good, before it turns into the most brutally honest shouting match with heaven you can imagine. You'll feel what his wealth actually meant: animals, dust, noise, and responsibilities that never stop breathing. So before you get comfortable, take a moment, like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the land of Uz. The good news, you're extremely offensively wealthy. The bad news, your wealth is alive, loud, and poops continuously. You open your eyes and the first thing you taste is dust. It's in your mouth like you went to sleep chewing sand on purpose. Your blanket is wool, which sounds cozy until you remember it's basically sheep hair, and it holds smells like a grudge. Outside, your household is already awake, because ancient life does not care about your feelings. You hear goats complaining like they've been personally wronged by the universe. Somewhere a donkey is screaming, and it's not even an emergency. That's just the donkey setting the vibe. You step out and immediately get hit by the morning bouquet. Dung, sweat, smoke, and smoke. Yesterday's milk trying to become tomorrow's cheese without permission. Flies rise up in a cloud like you just rang a dinner bell. They land on your arms, your face, your breakfast, your soul. This is your blessing. It's not a shiny pile of coins in a chest. It's herds. Herds are like owning several thousand tiny problems with hooves. You walk through your property and it's big. Like people point when you pass big. But the ground is trampled into a crunchy mess, because animals do not understand the concept of designated bathroom areas. There are servants moving fast, barefoot, carrying water skins, pushing animals, shouting over each other. Everyone smells like work. Even the clean ones smell like clean sweat, which is still sweat, just with ambition. And you, congratulations, you're Job. You're the guy people talk about when they want to describe a life that's going right. You've got camels, oxen, donkeys, sheep. The whole mobile economy is basically parked in your yard. Camels, by the way, smell like a wet couch that's been left outside for a month. They stare at you like they know secrets. They also bite, which is a fun feature in an investment. You do a quick count in your head, because this isn't a hobby farm. This is logistics. This is an ancient spreadsheet, except the spreadsheet can kick you in the ribs and give you a disease. Every animal needs water. Every animal needs food. Every animal needs someone to stop it from wandering off and becoming someone else's blessing. Wealth, in Uz, is just constant maintenance with teeth. Your home isn't a palace like in the movies. It's a large compound that's practical, dusty, and always one gust of wind away from becoming a grit buffet. The walls keep out some heat and some trouble. They do not keep out sound, smells, or insects with purpose. You look up and the sun is already doing that aggressive early morning thing. It's not warm and pretty. It's a bright, dry stare. The kind that says, hydrate or suffer. Somewhere nearby, someone is making bread. You smell it for half a second, and your heart lifts. Then the wind shifts, and you're back to manure and smoke, because joy is limited here. People greet you with respect that's real, not just because you're rich, because you're steady. You're the sort of man everyone expects to keep things together. You've got 10 children, which is not a cute detail. That's a whole small town of personalities, appetites, and opinions. They're grown now, and they do what grown children do when their father is wealthy. They feast. They rotate through houses, throwing dinners like it's their job. There's meat, there's wine, there's laughter that carries across the courtyard. You can hear it sometimes at night, drifting on the air. It sounds like blessing if you don't think too hard. It sounds like everything is secure. But you do think hard, constantly, because you're Job, and you've got that particular kind of piety that comes with a nervous edge. Not nervous like you're scared of shadows. Nervous like you know life is fragile and you refuse to be casual about it. You're careful with God the way people are careful with open flames. So after the feasting cycles, you do your routine. You rise early, because of course you do. You wash up as best you can, which in this place means splashing water and pretending you feel refreshed. Then you prepare offerings for your children, not because you caught them doing something, not because you have proof, just because you know human beings. Maybe one of them said something stupid. Maybe one of them got a little too comfortable. Maybe someone toasted the night and let arrogance slip out. You can't hear every word at every table, so you cover them. You place the offering like a shield. You treat devotion like preventative medicine, because you've seen what happens when people take life for granted. The fire is hot, the smoke is thick, and it clings to your hair. You smell like burnt fat and ash, which is not exactly luxury. Your eyes sting, your throat scratches, and still you do it. You stand there in the early light, watching the smoke rise, feeling that familiar mix of reverence and responsibility. Across the property, the animals keep moving. Someone yells. A sheep makes a noise like a broken accordion. A dog snaps at a fly and misses, which feels like the most honest moment of the morning. This is the life everyone envies. This is the headline. Job is blessed. Job is great. Job is secure. But you're standing ankle deep in dust, surrounded by living inventory, managing a kingdom made of meat. And it's working. Somehow it's working. For now, your world holds. The herds are where they should be. The servants know their tasks. The children are alive and loud. The sky is clear, and you can almost believe tomorrow will look like today. You take one more look across your land, squinting into the brightness. You don't know it yet, but you're standing on the edge of a trapdoor, and you're still doing everything right. The sun keeps climbing like it has somewhere important to be, and you're still down here in the dust, squinting across a kingdom of hooves. A servant calls your name from somewhere behind the sheep pens. Another one is arguing with a camel, which is already a losing negotiation. The day is moving along in the usual way, loud, gritty, and suspiciously normal. You roll your shoulders, feeling that familiar tightness in your back. Wealth is heavy, even when it's technically blessing, especially when it's chewing on your fence. But before your world collapses around you, you get dragged into something you were never meant to witness. Something Job will never hear. Something that happens far above the dust and the livestock and the smell of his prosperity. It starts without warning, like stepping through a doorway you didn't see. 1 second you're down here with flies landing on your eyelashes, and the next you're somewhere else entirely. Somewhere that doesn't have wind or heat or the comforting misery of gravity. The air is not air. It's clean in a way that feels illegal, like it's been filtered through gemstones and judgment. You take a breath out of habit, and it tastes like nothing. No smoke, no sweat, no manure, no life. Honestly, it's unsettling. There's a brightness everywhere, but it's not the warm sun on your skin kind. It's the kind of light that makes you feel like you forgot to put on clothes. You look down, still you, still intact, still very aware you did not RSVP to whatever this is. And there's movement. Figures arriving, gathering, converging with that purposeful, we have a meeting energy. If you've ever watched people stream into a room for a serious conversation, it's like that. Only nobody's shuffling papers. Nobody's adjusting a tie. Nobody's trying to pretend they read the memo. They just appear, present, ready. You can't count them, not because there are too many, but because your mind won't hold the number still. It slides around. You try to focus on one and end up noticing 10 more. And in the middle, centered like the whole place is built around it, there's a presence that makes your knees want to fold. Not fear exactly, more like the sensation of standing too close to a cliff edge and realizing the ground has been letting you pretend you're in control. This is the kind of place where words like important and powerful feel like tiny, cheap coins. This is the court, the council, the seat where decisions don't get debated so much as spoken into reality. You want to be very quiet. Your entire personality wants to whisper an apology. And then you notice someone else arriving. He doesn't drift in with the others. He shows up like he's late and doesn't care. Like he's been somewhere else, somewhere messy, and tracked it in. If the rest of them feel like clean flame, this one feels like dust under your fingernails. He looks normal, which is somehow worse. No horns, no red skin, no dramatic cape billowing in non-existent wind. If you expected a cartoon villain, you're going to be disappointed. This is more like the person in a courtroom who stands up and says, "Actually, I have some concerns," and you immediately regret having ears. The accuser, the prosecutor, the one whose whole job is to walk in, point at humanity, and say, "Are we sure about that?" He steps forward, and you can practically hear the tone of his voice before he speaks. It's not rage, it's not chaos, it's paperwork, it's a clipboard. It's someone who enjoys finding the tiny loophole in your contract and smiling while they do it. A voice, God's voice, fills the space without needing to get louder. It isn't booming for drama. It doesn't need to perform. It's just there, like the ground of existence decided to speak. "Where have you come from?" The accuser answers like it's the most ordinary question in the world. From roaming through the earth, walking back and forth on it. You feel that for some reason, down in your stomach. Because you've been on the earth. You've walked it. You've tasted its grit. You've stepped in things you didn't want to name. And this guy's been down there too, circling like a vulture with a law degree. God speaks again, and there's a shift in the room, if you can call it a room. Attention turns, like everyone is now looking at the same point. "Have you considered my servant Job?" Your throat goes dry, which is impressive since you're in a place that isn't even running on moisture. Job. Down there, in Uz, standing ankle deep in dust, doing everything right, smelling like ash and responsibility. God continues, and you can hear it, the unmistakable sound of pride, not arrogant pride, not insecure pride, the quiet, solid pride of someone pointing out something good in a world that usually isn't. There is no one like him on the earth, blameless, upright. He fears God and turns away from evil. You flinch a little because you know what happens when someone praises you too loudly. The world hears. Envy hears. Misfortune hears and starts warming up its hands. The accuser doesn't look impressed. Of course he doesn't. He's got that expression people get when they're about to ruin a compliment with a technically. He tilts his head, like he's tasting the words. Does Job fear God for nothing? Oh, so that's the angle. You can almost hear the gears turning, the way a mind like this works. No wonder he doesn't need horns. He has suspicion. That's enough. He gestures, casually, like he's pointing out a stain on a garment. Haven't you put a hedge around him, around his household, around everything he has? And suddenly you can see it. Not a literal fence, not a wall of stone, but a covering. A layer of protection that Job never sees, because nobody sees the roof over their head until it's gone. The accuser's voice stays calm, which is the scariest part. You've blessed the work of his hands, his flocks and herds spread across the land. Down in Uz, that looks like prosperity. Up here, it gets recited like evidence. The accuser steps in closer, not threatening, just confident, like he knows the rules of this place and expects them to be followed. But stretch out your hand, strike everything he has. He pauses, letting the silence sit there like a stone, and he will curse you to your face. Your skin prickles, because you know what he's saying. He's saying Job doesn't love God. Job loves the benefits. Job loves the safety. Job loves the feeling of waking up and thinking, tomorrow will look like today. Take that away, the accuser says, and you'll see what Job really is. It's an insult dressed up as logic. It's a challenge disguised as concern. And you want so badly for this to be the moment where someone shuts it down. Where God says, no, absolutely not. Meeting adjourned. Get out. But that isn't what happens. God doesn't sound rattled. God doesn't sound defensive. God doesn't argue the way humans argue when they're trying to protect their ego. God simply answers, all right. 2 words, and your stomach drops like you just stepped off a ledge. God's voice continues, steady as bedrock. Everything he has is in your power. You wait for the next line to fix it, to soften it, to add some kind of comforting clause. And you do get a clause, but it's not comforting. Only do not lay a hand on the man himself. That's it. That's the boundary. Not, don't take his children. Not, don't traumatize him. Not, don't turn his whole life into a crater. Just, don't kill him. You stand there trying to process the sheer casualness. Not casual like nobody cares. Casual like this is a courtroom decision being issued, and the consequences are already understood. A permission slip gets signed in the air, and Job is down there, checking on his herds, thinking about offerings, worrying about his children's mouths. He has no idea. He will never know this conversation happened. He will never know that somewhere above the sky, his name got used like a point in an argument. The accuser's posture shifts. He has what he came for. He doesn't celebrate. He doesn't cackle. He simply turns, as if this was always going to go his way, and he's got places to be. He leaves the council like someone walking out of a meeting with an approved budget, and you, uninvited witness, are left staring into that bright, merciless cleanliness, feeling sick in a place where nobody gets sick, because you can feel the imbalance now. You can feel how small Uz is under all this, how tiny Job's careful righteousness looks from up here, where it can be discussed like a test case. The council remains steady and unmoving, like the foundation of reality doesn't need to fidget. There's no scramble, no panic, no urgent frantic, wait, should we do this? Up here, the gears turn without squealing. Down there, people scream. You try to hold both realities in your head at the same time, and it doesn't fit. On earth, bread, smoke, dung, laughter, feasts, tired feet. Up here, permission, boundaries, accusation, silence that weighs more than stone. You glance around again at the gathered beings, hoping to find someone who looks uncomfortable. Somebody shifting their weight, raising a hand, whispering, "I don't love this." But they're not like us. They don't bite their nails. They don't get heartburn. They don't lose sleep. They simply stand, present for what is decided, and the decision has been made. The brightness begins to thin, not fading exactly, but pulling away like a curtain sliding back into place. You feel yourself dropping, not physically falling, but being returned. Weight comes back first. Gravity grabs you like a familiar, rough-handed friend. Air hits your lungs again, thick with life and smell, and you almost want to cry from relief at how disgusting it is. Dust reappears, heat reappears, sound reappears. Somewhere, a goat screams like it's filing a complaint with the universe. You're back in news. You're back on the ground where people have to chew their bread slowly because it could break a tooth. You're back where work has blisters and everything has a smell. And the cruelest part is how normal it still looks. The sky is still clear. The sun is still doing that bright, dry stare. The servants are still moving. The animals are still living inventory with opinions. Job is still standing there, solid as ever, scanning his land like a man who thinks the world is basically stable. He doesn't look doomed. He doesn't look cursed. He looks like someone who has done every right thing and expects reality to respond appropriately. You watch him speak to a servant. You can't hear the words over the distance, but you can see the gesture, simple, practical, a correction, an instruction. Job is the kind of man who handles problems early. He fixes leaks before the roof collapses. He does not know the roof has already been allowed to collapse. His children are somewhere else, living their loud, well-fed lives, laughing over wine, passing bowls of stew, calling each other by childhood nicknames. 10 of them, 10 living targets. And the day moves forward anyway, because the day does not care what was decided above it. A breeze kicks up and carries the smell of sheep lanolin and trampled earth. Flies orbit your face like you're the main attraction. Somewhere, a worker slaps at his own neck and mutters something bitter. Job's world keeps turning. There's no thunderclap announcing the wager. No voice from the sky saying, "Attention, your life is now a demonstration." No omens streaking across the horizon. Just sunlight, dust, and routine. Job walks toward the center of the compound, where the shade is thin and the ground is packed hard. His robe sways around his ankles. His feet step carefully because the earth is uneven and always trying to trip you. He pauses to listen to something. Maybe a report about the herds. Maybe a question about supplies. His face is calm. You want to grab him by the shoulders. You want to say, "Don't you feel it? Don't you sense the air changing?" But there's nothing to feel yet. That's the point. The trapdoor doesn't creak. It just opens. He nods, dismisses the servant, and continues, already thinking of the next task. His mind is a careful machine built for stewardship. And somewhere far away, too far for anyone here to see, the accuser is already moving, not rushing, not frantic, just purposeful, like a storm gathering itself without emotion. You look at the horizon, squinting against the brightness. Everything out there looks ordinary, a shimmer of heat, a line of distant hills, a sky so open it makes you feel exposed. Merchants travel those roads. Raiders travel those roads too. Weather travels those roads. Fire from the sky doesn't need a road. Wind doesn't need permission. And now, someone has permission. Job steps into the shade of a wall and wipes sweat from his brow with the edge of his robe. The fabric is dusty where his hand grabs it. Nothing stays clean here, not even the righteous. He looks out over his land again. Maybe he feels grateful. Maybe he feels responsible. Maybe he feels that constant buzzing awareness that blessing is fragile and must be handled with care. He does not feel the eyes on him, not the human eyes, those he's used to, the other eyes, the ones that look at a life and think, let's see what happens when we strip it down to bone. You can hear laughter faintly from somewhere, one of the children's houses maybe. Music, a hand drum, the clink of cups. It's the sound of a good life. It's the sound of a life that has no idea. It's minutes away from becoming a horror story told in gasps. Job turns away from the horizon and heads inside because the day is hot and there's always something to handle. Servants scatter as he passes, respectful, quick. A dog trots along the edge of the courtyard, sniffing at a scrap of something, tail flicking. Normal, normal, normal. And above all of it, invisible to everyone down here, hangs that boundary line drawn in the bright, clean court. Everything he has, just not his skin. Not yet. You stand there in the dust, feeling the weight of that sentence settle over Uz, like a shadow that hasn't arrived yet. The sun keeps shining. The animals keep chewing. The children keep feasting. And somewhere beyond the hills, the first messenger is already running without knowing why, feet pounding earth that doesn't understand what's coming. The sun is higher now, and the heat has that baked clay attitude. You can feel it coming up off the ground, rising through your sandals like the earth is exhaling. The compound hums the way it always does. Animals complain, servants shout. Somewhere, someone is trying to convince a donkey that left is a concept worth exploring. Job is in motion, because Job is always in motion. When you're responsible for more livestock than some kings, you don't really relax. You just switch tasks and call it rest. You catch a glimpse of him near the shaded edge of a wall, listening to a report. He nods like a man who believes effort produces stability. Across the land, plows bite into soil. Oxen lean forward, muscles shifting under dusty hides. The sound is steady, almost soothing. Wood creaking, leather straps squeaking, a quiet rhythm of work. It's the kind of day that makes you think you'll live to old age. The sky is clean. The horizon sits there, innocent. Even the flies seem normal, which is a low bar, but still. And far out beyond those hills, somebody is running. At first it's nothing. Just a speck that doesn't match the landscape. A dot that jitters, then grows, then turns into a person moving wrong. Not late for lunch, wrong. End of the world wrong. The runner hits the outer edge of the property and doesn't slow down. He barrels past a pen and nearly wipes out, catching himself on a post slick with old lanolin and newer things. His chest heaves. Sweat has cut clean rivers down his face through the dust. His eyes are too wide, like they're trying to hold onto a scene they can't afford to lose. Someone shouts at him, an angry, normal shout. Hey, watch it, slow down. He doesn't even hear them. He staggers toward the inner courtyard where Job is, and you feel the air change before any words land. It's like watching a cup tip over in slow motion. The spill hasn't hit the floor yet, but you already know it's coming. The man falls too, his knees so hard you hear the impact. Dust puffs up around him. Job turns, and you see that reflexive patience on his face. What is it now? What broke? Who needs what? The servant's mouth opens, and the words come out in a rush that sounds like he's trying to outrun them. The oxen were ploughing. The donkeys were grazing beside them. He swallows hard, and his throat makes that raw clicking sound of panic and dryness. The Sabians fell on them. They took them. They struck the servants with the edge of the sword. He flinches like he can still hear it. And I alone have escaped to tell you. For a heartbeat, nothing moves. Your brain tries to file it away as a single tragedy. Raiders. It happens. The roads are dangerous. You tighten security. You mourn. You rebuild. You can almost see Job's mind doing that math. Loss, yes. Painful, yes, but manageable. His jaw tightens. His eyes focus like he's already planning what to do next. Who to send, what to replace, how to keep the rest safe. He draws breath to speak. He never gets to. Because there's another sound cutting in from the gate. Footsteps, fast, sloppy, wrong. A second servant crashes into the courtyard like a man fleeing a nightmare that's still chewing on his heels. His hair is singed, not stood too close to the cook fire singed, burned. The smell hits you a second later. Char and scorched wool, that horrible sweet edge of cooked fat. Your stomach does a slow, unhappy roll. He doesn't kneel. He barely stays upright. His eyes lock on Job, and the words rip out of him like he's vomiting them. Fire of God fell from heaven. He says it like the phrase is a weapon. It burned up the sheep. It burned up the servants. It consumed them. His voice cracks on that last word, and you can tell he saw it happen. Not smoke on the horizon, not the aftermath, the actual moment. And I alone have escaped to tell you. The courtyard goes silent in that particular way. People go silent when they don't want to breathe wrong. Even the animals seem to pause, as if the smell has reached them too. Fire from heaven, not lightning that struck one unlucky tree. This is the kind of burning you can't fix with water and regret. The kind that turns a whole hillside into blackened bones and melted horn. Job's face drains, as if the blood heard the news and decided it didn't want to be present. He looks past the messenger toward the fields, like his eyes can force distance to give back what it took. His hands flex at his sides, not trembling exactly, trying to remain useful. The first messenger is still on his knees, still breathing hard, staring at the ground, like the dirt will open and swallow him. The second messenger sways on his feet, smelling like a funeral pyre. Nobody knows what to say, because there isn't a sentence for this. There's no polite way to respond to, "Fire fell from heaven and ate my co-workers." You think this is the moment the day snaps in half. Before and after, you're wrong, because the universe has more receipts to deliver. A third figure appears at the entrance, and he's moving like his legs are made of panic. One sandal is half off. The strap slaps against his heel as he runs, like even his footwear is trying to escape. He's bleeding from the elbow, a bright smear of red across dust. His breath comes in ragged pulls, like he's been running so hard his lungs are filing complaints. He gets close enough to speak and doesn't bother with greetings, honorifics, or basic human decency. The Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties. He lifts a shaking hand, holding up 3 fingers as if Job might argue about the number. They swept down on the camels and took them. They struck the servants with the edge of the sword. His eyes dart around wild, as if he expects the raiders to burst into the courtyard any second and finish the job, and I alone have escaped to tell you. There's a moment where your mind just stalls. Oxen and donkeys gone, sheep gone, camels gone. That's not just wealth, that's transport, labor, food, clothing, trade. That's the whole machine of life being ripped apart and carried off in 4 different directions. It's like someone came into your house and stole the fridge, the bed, the car, and the roof, all before noon, and the servants. The servants aren't numbers. You've watched them work. You've seen them laugh. You've heard them argue over water jars and complain about the heat and slap flies off their faces. Now they're just missing. Not missing like wandered off. Missing like fell in the dust and didn't get back up. The courtyard feels too bright. The sun keeps shining with that smug, mindless commitment it has. The light doesn't dim for grief. It doesn't even flicker. Job stands there, surrounded by 3 messengers who smell like smoke, sweat, and fear. The air tastes metallic, like your mouth knows blood is part of this story. He doesn't speak yet. He looks at the men, one by one, like he's trying to decide if this is real, if he's going to wake up on his straw mattress and laugh at the ridiculous dream where the sky itself joined the robbery. His lips part. Before any sound comes out, a 4th shadow crosses the entryway. This one is different. The first 3 men ran like they were being chased. This one moves like the chasing caught him, and he slipped away with something torn out of him. He's slow, stumbling, not because he's tired, but because his body is refusing to carry what his mouth has to say. He's pale under the grime. His eyes look unfocused, like he's not entirely inside his own skull. When he reaches Job, he doesn't collapse right away. He just stands there, swaying gently. You can see his hands shaking, not the quick tremor of adrenaline, the slow tremble of a man trying not to fall apart in public. He clears his throat, and the sound is wet. Your sons and daughters. Even the phrase makes the courtyard tilt. Your sons and daughters. Not livestock, not servants, not inventory, family. He swallows, and you can see his throat working like he's forcing stones down. They were feasting, drinking wine, in their oldest brother's house. For a split second, your mind tries to go there. That house. The sound of laughter, the clink of cups, the smell of roasted meat and warm bread. 10 faces, familiar voices, a room full of living. The messenger's eyes fill, and he blinks hard, like that might keep it contained. A mighty wind came from the wilderness. He lifts a hand and points vaguely toward the open land where nothing blocks anything, toward the wide spaces that breed sudden disaster. It struck the 4 corners of the house. His voice drops, almost to a whisper, as if speaking louder would make it happen again. The house fell on the young people. The words land like a physical blow. Your chest tightens, and for a heartbeat, you can't breathe right. They are dead. He doesn't rush the last part. He lets it stand there heavy and horrible. And I alone have escaped to tell you. Now he collapses. His knees hit the ground. His hands go down too, palms flat in the dust, like he's trying to hold himself in the world. His shoulders shake once, twice, like a man being cracked open. The courtyard is no longer a courtyard. It's a crater. Everything in it feels distant, unreal, as if you're watching through water. The bright sunlight looks obscene now, like someone laughing at a funeral. Job doesn't move. His face doesn't do anything dramatic at first. No immediate scream, no cinematic fall. He just stands there, very still, as if his body has forgotten what it's supposed to do when all 10 of your children are erased in one sentence. His eyes stare forward, not quite on the messenger, not quite on anything, like he's trying to see through the wall of reality and find the last 10 minutes where his world still existed. The 3 earlier messengers are frozen too. Nobody wants to make a sound. Nobody wants to be the next thing that happens. Somewhere in the compound, a goat bleats. It's a normal sound. It makes you want to throw something. Job's breath comes in once, then again. Slow, measured. like he's testing whether breathing still works in a world like this. His hands rise slightly, then drop. You can see the moment his mind stops trying to fix it. There is nothing to fix. The wealth is gone, but it's more than that. The proof of blessing, the structure of his days, the reason he makes offerings, the laughter that drifted across his land, crushed under a roof he didn't build, in a house he didn't enter, on a day he thought was normal. Job's shoulders lift, and you think he might speak. Some command, some cry, some demand that someone saddle a camel and ride for the ruins. Instead, his body finally does what the ancient world trained it to do when grief is too big for language. He tears his robe. It's not a gentle rip. He grabs fabric at the chest and yanks like he's trying to peel his own skin off. The sound is sharp, a violent tearing that makes everyone flinch. The robe opens, exposing the linen underneath, dusty and sweat-stained. It feels like watching a man rip down the sign that says everything is fine. Next comes the hair. He reaches up, fingers digging into it, and for a moment you think he'll pull at it like people do when they're panicking. But he doesn't just tug, he shaves. Somebody brings a blade without being asked, because servants know the choreography of mourning. They know what rich grief looks like. Job takes it, and you can see the sun flash on the metal. It's a small, practical blade, the kind used for trimming wool or cutting leather straps. Now it's used for stripping away the last shred of dignity. He drags it across his scalp, and tufts fall into the dust. Dark hair, then lighter. The sound is faint, a scrape, a whisper. The gesture is loud anyway. In this world, hair is honor. It's strength. It's identity. He removes it like it's nothing, like none of that matters anymore. His bare scalp catches the light, and he looks suddenly older, exposed, human. Then he drops, not fainting, not collapsing from weakness. He throws himself down, face toward the ground, in the dirt of his own courtyard. His knees hit first, then his hands, then his forehead. Dust puffs up around him and clings to the wetness at the corners of his eyes. If you've never seen someone fall into grief like that, it's unsettling. There's no elegance, no control, just a man pressing himself into the earth like he wants to disappear into it. The messengers sit there, staring, breathing, trembling. They look like survivors of 4 different apocalypses, which is accurate. Servants gather at a distance. Nobody comes too close. You don't crowd a man when his life has just been emptied. You don't speak unless spoken to. The smells of the day drift in anyway, because smells don't care. Dust, sweat, animal dung from the pens, smoke still clinging to one man's hair. Job's compound is still standing. The walls are still upright. The shade still falls where it always falls. But everything inside those walls has changed shape. Job stays on the ground for a long moment, motionless except for the rise and fall of his back. You can't see his face, pressed into dirt, but you can feel what's happening inside him. The frantic counting, the disbelief, the mental sprint back through every morning prayer, every offering, every careful act of righteousness. He has done everything right. He has lived like a man stacking stones against chaos, and chaos has stepped over the stones like they weren't there. When he finally speaks, it's muffled at first, the words pressed into the ground. Then he lifts his head slightly, enough for his voice to carry. Naked I came from my mother's womb. The sentence is plain. No poetry, no flourish. Just the blunt truth every human tries not to think about. And naked I will depart. You can hear the dust in his throat. You can hear the effort it takes to keep his voice steady. The Lord gave. He swallows, and the swallow is loud in the silence, and the Lord has taken away. That line lands hard, because it's not the line your heart wants. Your heart wants to accuse. Your heart wants to demand a reason. Your heart wants to point at the sky and start a fight. Job doesn't fight the sky. He names what happened. He puts it in the only frame he has left. And then, with his face still dirty, his robe torn open, his hair lying in little piles around him like shed feathers, he says the last part. Blessed be the name of the Lord. It's not cheerful. It's not the shiny kind of faith that fits on a decorative plaque. It's a man clinging to one remaining beam in a house that has already collapsed. The servants don't cheer. Nobody says amen like this is a sermon. They just stand there, watching their master kneel in the dust like he's been hit by the entire weight of the world and decided to stay kneeling anyway. The four messengers breathe, shakily, like they can't believe they're still alive. You can't stop seeing the images they delivered. Oxen yanked away by raiders, ropes snapping tight, hooves digging in, dust rising behind stolen animals, donkeys braying confused, then gone. Sheep, thousands of them, packed together, their wool catching fire, the smell of burning lanolin spreading fast. Men running, screaming, collapsing. Camels dragged off in 3 directions, their long necks swinging as they fight the pull, spittle flying, eyes rolling. More blood in the dust. And a house. A festive house with 10 young voices inside, full of wine and food and jokes that didn't get to finish. 4 corners struck at once, walls shuddering, the roof giving up like tired hands. A wind that didn't care about birthdays or blessings. Job stays there on the ground, and the minutes stretch. In the compound, practical life hesitates. A woman carrying water pauses, then slowly turns back, unsure where to put herself. A child somewhere starts to cry, then gets hushed quickly, as if noise could offend grief. Someone behind you whispers something, and another person shushes them like it's dangerous to speak. The sky remains offensively blue. That's one of the worst parts, honestly. If the heavens had any decency, they'd at least throw some clouds over this. A little dramatic. There will be bodies pulled from rubble, or what's left of them, and the smell of crushed plaster and broken beams and death. You can almost taste that smell already, even though the ruins are still miles away. Job finally pushes himself up to sitting. His robe hangs open, torn and ruined, and his chest is streaked with dirt where he fell. His face looks scraped raw, not from injury, but from shock. Eyes swollen already, as if his body is trying to swell shut the doorway, where grief keeps barging in. He looks older by a decade. He stares straight ahead, and you can tell his mind is not in the courtyard. It's at that house, in that moment, replaying a scene he didn't see. He is trying to picture his children's faces in their final breath, and it's destroying him in quiet, invisible ways. There's a sound, small but sharp, a jar cracking somewhere. Somebody's hand slipped, clay shattered against stone. Everyone flinches like it was thunder. That's how jumpy grief makes you. The world becomes a room full of traps. Job's gaze shifts slightly toward the sound, but he doesn't react. He has no spare reaction left. Everything he has is already occupied. The 4 messengers sit where they fell. They look like they want to crawl out of their own skin. They delivered the news, but they're still living in the echo of it. They're going to smell smoke for weeks. They're going to hear screaming in their dreams. They're going to wake up with their hearts pounding and their mouths dry. And they're going to remember Job's face when the 4th message landed. People think the worst part of disaster is the disaster. Sometimes the worst part is being the person who has to say it out loud. The compound begins to fill with that low murmur of mourning. Voices speaking softly, sandals scuffing, someone sniffing back tears, someone else making a noise that isn't quite a sob yet, but is headed there. The day has turned into a gathering, not a celebration. A crowd forms, respectful, horrified, unsure where to put their hands. Job remains on the ground, now sitting but still low, as if standing would be a kind of lie. He doesn't cover his torn robe. He doesn't smooth the fabric. He doesn't wipe the dust from his face. He has entered the country of grief, and the first border crossing is humiliation. You look around at the walls, the pens, the storage jars, the little piles of tools and rope. So much of it remains physically present, but the meaning is drained out, like blood from a wound. What is a war when raiders can come? What is a flock when fire can fall? What is a house when wind can take it down? What is a father when all his children are gone in one breath? Job's head tilts back slightly, and he closes his eyes. His lips move again, but quieter now, words meant for someone he can't see. No one interrupts him. No one offers advice. Not yet. The sun keeps sliding across the sky, slow and indifferent, dragging the afternoon forward. Shadows lengthen along the ground, and the dust motes dance in the light, like they don't know better. Job sits in the dirt with his torn robe and bare scalp, surrounded by stunned servants and the 4 men who brought the end of his world. And the strangest, cruelest detail of all is that his body is still intact. His heart is beating, his lungs are working. He can feel everything. He can remember everything. He can survive it. For now, he stays there, silent again, as if listening for footsteps that will never come back through the gate, as if the wind might reverse itself, as if the day might somehow unhappen. But the dust has already settled into the seams of his skin. The messengers have already spoken. The house has already fallen, and Uz, bright under its pitiless sun, keeps standing there like nothing happened at all. You don't spit curses up at the sky. You just grieve, openly, loudly, messily, and somehow you keep talking to God anyway. And you might think that's the end of it, that surely he's suffered enough. You would be wrong, because somewhere far beyond us, in a place you are never supposed to see, the air doesn't smell like goats or smoke. It smells like nothing at all, clean, weightless, like the world before anyone spilled anything on it. There's no dust here, no flies, no sand in your teeth, no mercy either. You're back in that court of the unseen, where the conversation is casual in the way only powerful beings can afford. It's the kind of casual that makes your skin crawl, even when you don't have skin. And there he is again, steady, unbothered, speaking Job's name like it's still a point of pride. Have you noticed him? Still holding on, still upright, even in the rubble. And the accuser is there too, with that posture of someone who is never impressed, like a professional critic at a feast, sniffing the bread and saying, "Interesting attempt." He doesn't argue that Job didn't lose everything. He argues that Job still has one thing left, his own body, because it's easy to be noble when your skin isn't screaming. It's easier to say, "Blessed be the name," when you're not actively trying to crawl out of yourself. So the suggestion gets made, nice and neat, like someone proposing a minor change in dinner plans. Touch his bone and his flesh. That's the phrase. Bone and flesh. Not give him a headache, not make him have a bad week. Bone and flesh means the frame and the soft parts, the structure and the feeling, the stuff you can't escape. And you feel that quiet consent, that awful allowance. Only spare his life, like that's supposed to be comforting, like leaving someone alive inside a burning house is a kindness. The unseen court doesn't clap. Nobody gasps. It's not theatre to them. It's permission. And the moment it's granted, you're yanked back down into the real world where things stink and scrape and hurt. Back to us. Back to a man sitting in the dirt with a shaved head and a torn robe, surrounded by people who don't know where to put their eyes. The days after the disaster blur in the way trauma makes time misbehave. Morning comes, and you don't want it. Evening comes, and you don't trust it. The compound is quieter now, like the walls are trying not to draw attention. Livestock sounds are missing in whole chunks. You keep expecting to hear the thick, restless noise of abundance. Instead, you hear absence. And absence has a sound. It's a hollow, waiting hush, broken by small, practical grief. Someone drops a tool and flinches. Someone laughs by accident, just once, and immediately looks like they've committed a crime. Food still gets made because living people are annoyingly committed to needing calories. But the meals taste like dust and obligation. Bread shows up, hard and brown and stubborn, and nobody has the energy to fight it. Job moves like a man wearing invisible weights. He talks to people because he has to. He nods at reports that don't matter anymore. He stares too long at the horizon, like the horizon owes him his children back. And at night, when the compound finally stops pretending to be normal, you hear it. Not speeches, not wisdom. The raw animal sounds grief pulls out of a human chest when nobody's watching. Then one morning, something changes. It doesn't start with a messenger running through the gate. No footsteps, no shouting, no warning. It starts with an itch. A tiny, mean little itch on skin that's already too dry from sun and sorrow. Job reaches for his side just under the ribs and scratches once. His fingernails drag over his skin, and you see him pause, because it's not satisfying. It's not the simple relief of dealing with a mosquito bite. It's deeper, wrong, like the itch isn't on the surface, but under it, in the meat. He scratches again, harder. His face tightens, just a flicker. Then he scratches somewhere else, his forearm, his neck, his scalp, where the hair used to be. Quick little movements, like he doesn't want anyone to notice. But you notice, because once you've watched a man bury 10 children, you notice everything. By midday, the itch has become a problem with teeth. Job's hands keep drifting to his skin. He rubs his arms. He digs at his shoulder through the torn fabric. He shifts like he can't get comfortable in his own body. The heat sits on the land, thick and oppressive, baking the grief right into the stones. Flies show up because flies always show up. They land on tears. They land on sweat. They land on Job. He swats them away without looking, but they come back with that stubborn confidence only insects have. They act like they pay rent here. By evening, you see the first swelling clearly. A raised lump at the base of his neck, angry and red, as if his skin is trying to grow a second head out of spite. Then another on his arm. Then one on his thigh, where the fabric rubs when he walks, each step turning into a little private torture. Job tries to ignore it. Of course he does. He's Job. He's the kind of man who thinks endurance is a form of control. But the swellings keep coming, one after another, like his body has joined the list of things being taken from him. And they don't stay small. They inflate, they tighten, they get shiny, stretched, hot to the touch. By the next morning, Job looks like a man losing an argument with his own skin. The lumps have turned into boils, full, swollen, furious things, each one a throbbing pocket of pain that makes your stomach turn. They bloom across his arms, up his neck, along his back. They creep over his legs like a curse with a map. You see one on his cheek, near the corner of his mouth, and it's so close to his eye that blinking looks uncomfortable. His face is swollen in places, and his eyes look glassy, not from tears this time, but from that exhausted, feverish haze. When he moves, he winces. When he sits, he winces. When he breathes too deep, he winces. There is no position left that doesn't hurt. Servants hover, unsure what to do. Someone offers water. Someone offers oil. Someone offers a clean cloth. Job takes nothing at first, because what good is a clean cloth when your skin is turning against you? The compound whispers start. Not loud, not cruel, at least not yet. But you hear the shift in tone, that subtle step back people take when sickness shows up. The half-second hesitation before approaching. The way hands stop reaching out. Illness in ooze isn't just discomfort. It's a category. It's a label. Unclean. And once that word starts sticking to you, it clings worse than sweat. Job tries to keep walking through his days, but the boils don't allow dignity. They don't allow focus. They don't allow sleep. At night, he lies down, and you can hear him turn, slow and careful, like he's trying not to pop. The straw mattress pricks at his skin. The rough fabric scrapes. Every little pressure point lights up. You watch him sit up in the dark and he becomes a man orbiting his own home, still technically inside it, but already being pushed out. Because sickness isn't just pain, it's exile. And now we arrive at the part nobody puts on the nice embroidered wall hangings, because there comes a moment when someone decides Job can't stay there anymore. Maybe it's an elder. Maybe it's a servant trying to protect the household. Maybe it's just the unspoken law of survival. Unclean people don't sit in the center. They sit outside. They sit where the refuse goes. So Job ends up at the ash heap. And if you're picturing a tidy little pile of fireplace leftovers, adjust that image immediately. This is the town dump. This is where you toss broken pottery, animal bones, spoiled food, used up cooking ash, and anything else you don't want near your living space. It's grey and gritty and uneven underfoot. The air is thick with old smoke, old rot, and that faint ammonia tang of things decomposing in the sun. There are flies, obviously. There's always a committee of flies. There might even be dogs nearby, thin and watchful, sniffing around for something edible, which tells you everything about the neighborhood. Job walks out there like a man being escorted out of his own life. No procession, no comfort. Just a slow shuffle over hard ground, his body aching with every step, each boil rubbing against fabric, against skin, against itself. He sits down in the ashes. They puff up around him, pale grey against his darker skin, clinging to sweat and sores. It's not soft, it's gritty. It gets into everything. But ashes are cool, and cool feels like mercy right now, even when it's filthy mercy. Job lowers himself carefully, but there is no careful enough. He settles, and the pain hits him anyway, that full body flare of every swollen wound protesting contact. His jaw tightens so hard you can see the muscles jump. His breathing comes out in short bursts. And once he's there, once he's seated in the dump like some discarded thing, he does what you do when your body becomes an enemy and there are no physicians, no antibiotics, no clean bandages stacked in a cabinet. He looks around for something that might help. His eyes land on the ground. Broken pottery is everywhere, scattered like the leftovers of 1,000 accidents. Jagged pieces of clay, sharp edges catching the light. Job reaches for a shard. It's curved, rough and chipped. Maybe part of a jar that used to hold oil or grain before it cracked and got thrown out here. He turns it in his hand like he's choosing a tool. And then he starts scraping. Not gently, not like a polite itch. He drags the shard along his skin with that desperate pressure that says relief is worth blood. The edge scrapes over a boil on his forearm, breaking the crust. Wetness wells up, and the flies get excited immediately, like they've been waiting for the main event. Job doesn't stop. He scrapes again, moving to his shoulder, to his thigh, to his calf. Every drag of pottery against skin makes you cringe, because you can almost feel it. Raw flesh, gritty ash, sharp clay, all working together to create a new kind of suffering. And the worst part is that it helps. For a second it helps. The itch quiets just enough to let him breathe. So he keeps doing it. He scrapes until his skin is streaked and weeping and spotted with blood. He scrapes until the shard is smeared. He scrapes because it's the only thing that gives him any control at all. The mighty Job, once surrounded by wealth and honor, is now sitting in garbage, self-administering medieval dermatology with trash. If you don't laugh a little, you'll scream. The town doesn't come out to check on him. They avoid the dump anyway, because it's disgusting. And now it's also Job. People pass at a distance. You see them glance over and then look away fast, like looking too long might invite the same fate. Children get tugged by the wrist. Come on, don't stare, don't get close. It's not just fear of contagion, it's fear of meaning. Because if Job can end up there, Job, the careful one, the righteous one, the generous one, then what does safety even mean? So they keep walking, and Job stays in the ashes. Hours pass like that. Scrape, pause, wince, scrape again. The sun moves across the sky, hot and shameless, and Job's skin shines in places where it's stretched tight over swelling. His lips crack from dehydration. Someone sets a water jar down a little too far away, like they're feeding a dangerous animal. No hand to hand. No kindness that requires contact. Job reaches for it slowly, his fingers trembling. His nails are rimmed with ash and dried fluid now. His hands look like they belong to a man twice his age. He drinks, and the water dribbles down his chin because his mouth is swollen near one boil. He wipes it with the back of his hand and leaves a smear. Dignity is gone. Privacy is gone. Comfort is gone. All that's left is endurance. And then his wife shows up. You hear her before you see her because she walks like a woman with purpose. Her sandals slap the hard ground fast and angry. Dust kicks up around her feet. She comes out to the ash heap wearing grief like armor. Her face is drawn tight. Her eyes are sharp from crying and sharper from not being allowed to stop functioning. She smells like smoke and sweat and whatever people smell like when they've been sleeping badly for days. She looks at Job, really looks, and you can tell she's seeing it all at once. Not just the boils, not just the scraping, the whole collapse. 10 children gone, wealth gone, servants gone, household half emptied, and now her husband, the man who used to stand tall in the gate and speak like people mattered, sitting in a dump like a plague victim. Her mouth tightens, and when she speaks, it's not gentle. She doesn't have gentle left. Are you still holding on to your integrity? The word lands like she picked it up and threw it. Integrity. As if it's a thing Job is clutching with bloody hands, while everything else is ripped away. She steps closer, close enough that you see her hesitate for half a heartbeat. Because even now, even as she's furious, even as she's drowning too, she still has the human instinct to recoil from the sores. Her eyes flick to the shard in Job's hand, to the raw streaks on his arms. She swallows hard, and then the line comes out blunt as a stone. Curse God and die. There it is, not poetic, not complicated. just the desperate wish to end the suffering, even if it means spitting in the face of heaven on the way out. And you can hear what she's really saying underneath it. Enough. Stop. I can't watch you rot in public. I can't live in this story anymore. Job looks up at her. His eyes are red-rimmed. His face is swollen in places. There's ash stuck to the sweat on his forehead. He looks like a man who's been sanded down to the bone. But he's still there. He's still inside himself. His fingers tighten around the pottery shard, and for a second, you wonder if he's going to throw it, or drop it, or just let his hand go limp. Instead, he speaks, and his voice is rough, not loud, the words scraping out of his throat like they have edges. He calls her out, not cruelly but firmly, like he's trying to hold the last line in place. You're speaking like one of the foolish. It's not an insult for sport. It's heartbreak with boundaries. And then he says the thing that makes your stomach twist, because it's so simple, and it costs so much to say. Should we accept good from God and not trouble? He doesn't say it like a proverb you hang above a doorway. He says it like a man forcing his hands not to let go. His wife's face shifts, anger, pain, exhaustion, all fighting for space. She looks at him like she wants to shake him, like she wants to collapse into him, like she wants to run away from him. And you realize she is grieving too. She lost 10 children too. Her body just isn't the one covered in boils, so nobody calls her unclean. Nobody exiles her to the dump. She's still allowed to stand in the center of what's left and carry the shame of it. Her mouth opens like she might say more, but there's nothing left that won't break something. She turns away. Her shoulders are stiff, and she walks back toward the town with that rigid speed of someone who can't slow down, or they'll fall apart. Job watches her go. He doesn't call after her. He doesn't beg. He just sits there, because his body won't let him do much else. The ash heap settles around him again. Quiet, except for insects, and distant life continuing like it didn't get the memo. Job looks down at the pottery shard in his hand. He turns it once, watching dried fluid darken the clay edge. His fingers are cramped. His skin is angry and raw. He sets the shard down beside him, because even scraping has limits. And in the silence that follows, you feel the full weight of what's happened. He's lost his children, his wealth, his servants, his place, his comfort. Now he's losing his body, and with it, he's losing the last easy thing people give you when you're suffering. Company. Nobody sits close to a man covered in sores. Nobody touches him. Nobody hugs him. In this world, touch is a kind of proof you still belong. Job doesn't get that proof anymore. So he sits in the ashes, alone in the middle of the day, surrounded by the smell of burned refuse and open wounds. The sun moves. The flies continue their disgusting little careers, and the former richest man in the East remains out there, breathing carefully, because every breath pulls on skin that hurts. He doesn't curse God, not out loud, not yet. But you can feel the question building anyway, heavy and hot under the surface, because now the suffering isn't out in the fields. It's not in the sky. It's not even in the ruins of a house. It's under his own skin. And he can't step out of it. He can't walk away from it. He can't set it down. He can only sit there in the ashes, waiting for whatever comes next, while the town keeps its distance and the day keeps moving like nothing happened at all. Word travels. It always does, even in a place where messages travel on sweaty legs and stubborn donkeys. You can lose 10 children and 7,000 sheep, and somehow the news still shows up ahead of you, panting at the next village like a dog with gossip in its mouth. Out on the ash heap, Time has turned syrup thick. Daylight crawls. The flies keep working overtime. Your skin keeps doing that miserable thing where it hurts and it itches at the same time, like your body is arguing with itself. And just when you think the universe has run out of new ways to humiliate you, you see movement on the road. 3 shapes, far off at first, wavering in the heat, coming closer with that slow, determined pace of men who have committed to a journey and are now regretting every step. Dust coats their sandals, dust coats their hems, dust coats their faces in pale streaks, where sweat has carved tracks down their cheeks. They've come a long way, not for a festival, not for profit, not for any fun, reason. They've come for you. You recognize them as they approach, even though distance and sunlight flatten everything into a shimmer. Old friends, the kind who used to sit with you in better days, when sitting meant cushions instead of ashes. Eliphaz first, with the careful walk of someone who thinks before he steps. Bildad beside him, stiff-backed, as if tradition itself is holding his spine upright. Zophar bringing up the rear, moving like a man who has already formed an opinion and is now arriving to deliver it. They get closer, and the smell hits them. You see it happen. They don't say anything, but their faces shift in that involuntary way people have when the air turns into a wet rag soaked in infection, smoke, and human suffering. They try breathing through their mouths. It doesn't help. They're near enough now to see details they didn't get from the rumors. Not Job is sick. Job is ruined. Job is sitting in a town dump like discarded furniture. Job is covered in boils and ash, and there's a pottery shard nearby like a tool that should not exist in a sane world. They stop, all 3 of them, and for a moment you almost hope, that they'll turn around. Not because you don't want them, because you don't want what comes next. Their eyes fill, their mouths open and close with no sound coming out, like their grief has briefly stolen the ability to form language. They look at each other, and you can tell they didn't prepare for the reality of you. Rumors are tidy, you are not. Eliphaz makes a sound in his throat that tries to be a greeting and turns into something closer to a groan. Bildad's hands lift, helpless, like he wants to do something, but can't think of a single thing that doesn't involve touching you. Zophar just stares, jaw set, as if staring hard enough might force sense into this. And then the ancient grief response kicks in, automatic as blinking. They tear their robes, not a polite rip, not a symbolic tug. A full-body, fabric-destroying tear, the kind that says, we are not okay, and we're not pretending. Dust and ash puff up as they throw handfuls of dirt into the air and let it fall onto their own heads. It sticks to sweat. It clings in their hair. Now everyone looks like they lost an argument with a mud wall. They come closer, finally, and sit down with you. Not on anything. There is nothing to sit on. Just on the ground, in the ash. Close enough to show solidarity and far enough to keep their robes from brushing your sores. It's the ancient version of sitting with someone in the hospital waiting room, except the waiting room is a dump and the hospital is not happening. And they don't speak. At first it's awkward. Their eyes flick over your skin and away again. They watch flies land and lift off. They watch you shift your weight and bite back the sound that wants to come out of you. They don't know where to look, so they look at the ground. You all sit there while the sun drags itself across the sky like it's tired too. The first night comes, and it's colder than you want. The heat bleeds out of the land fast, leaving your skin tight and stinging. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks once and then thinks better of it. Eliphaz pulls his robe tighter. Bildad rubs his hands for warmth. Zophar clears his throat like he's about to say something, then doesn't. The second day arrives with the same brutal brightness. Your sores have crusted overnight and cracked again when you moved. The ash has found its way into every raw place it shouldn't be. Your tongue feels thick with thirst and fever. They still don't speak. The third day, more silence. And it's strangely merciful, because silence in this moment is the only thing that doesn't add weight. No explanations, no lessons, no at least, just presence. They eat a little quietly. Dry bread that snaps instead of tears. A sip of water passed around in careful turns. When they chew, it's loud in the emptiness. They sleep in fits, heads bowed, waking to the sound of you shifting, to the soft, wet cough of your body trying to keep going. Fourth day. Fifth. On the sixth, you catch Eliphaz watching you with a look that's too focused, like he's building a speech in his head. Bildad keeps glancing up at the sky and frowning, as if he expects an answer to be written up there in cloud shapes. Zophar looks like he's enduring silence, the way some people endure a delay at a gate, tapping their foot, waiting for the real business to begin. By the seventh day, the air itself feels heavy with unsaid words. Their grief has settled into something else, a need, not to comfort you, to make this make sense, because your suffering is a problem for them and you can feel it. Not a practical problem, a worldview problem. And on the seventh day, you break. Not because you want to talk, because your body has run out of room to hold it all. Your chest tightens, and the sound that comes out of you isn't a sentence at first. It's a cracked noise, half sob, half cough, like your lungs are also grieving. They all look up. Finally, your voice scrapes out, rough as pottery against skin, and you say what has been boiling under your tongue for days. You curse the day you were born, not God, yet. The day, the night, the whole calendar page. You talk like a man who wants time itself to be erased, because if the day never existed, maybe none of this would have happened. You say you wish you'd been stillborn. You wish you'd been carried from womb to grave without ever opening your eyes. You wish someone had thrown a blanket over your first breath and called it mercy. Your friends sit frozen, listening. And for a moment, just a moment, you think they might let it be what it is. A man in pain, speaking pain. But Eliphaz's face shifts into that expression people get when they decide they're about to be helpful. It's the most dangerous expression on earth. He leans forward slightly, careful not to get too close, like your sickness is a fire and he's trying to warm his hands without getting burned. My friend, he starts, voice gentle. Gentle, the way you speak to someone right before you ruin their day. You can almost see him choosing words like he's selecting fruit at a market stall. Not too harsh, not too soft, just the right amount of righteous. He reminds you of who you used to be, how you strengthened weak hands, how you encouraged people who stumbled, how you told others to be brave when fear chewed at their insides. And you hear the implication coming like a donkey cart you can't get out of the road of. You helped other people hold it together, so why aren't you holding it together? He says it with sympathy, but it still lands like a judgment. He starts talking about what he's seen in life, what he's observed, that the people who plow trouble tend to harvest trouble. That suffering doesn't just happen. It arrives with a reason stitched into it. And he says it like it's comforting, which is an incredible choice. Because you're sitting in a dump covered in sores, and this man has decided the best gift he can bring is a lecture about cause and effect. Eliphaz's eyes get distant for a moment, and you know this is his favorite part. He tells you about a vision, a night, a whisper, a breath of air that made his hair stand up. He describes it like he's recounting a spiritual vacation he took that you weren't invited to. He was lying down, half asleep, when dread fell on him. His bones trembled. A spirit passed by his face, and the hair on his body bristled. It stood still, and he couldn't make out its form. Then a voice spoke. Can a person be more righteous than God? Can a human be more pure than their maker? Eliphaz looks at you like he just dropped a jewel into your lap, like this is supposed to sparkle and distract you from the fact that your skin is trying to fall off. Bildad nods along, because of course he does. Zophar's mouth tightens with impatience, like Eliphaz is taking too long to get to the point. And the point arrives. Eliphaz tells you to seek God, to commit your cause, to accept correction, because blessed is the one whom God reproves. He says reproves the way someone says a little rain, while you're actively drowning. You stare at him. Your throat burns. You want to ask which part of this feels like a gentle correction. The dead children part, the livestock stolen and burned part, the your body is now an open wound part. But your voice is weak, and the words come out slower than the anger in your chest. You tell him you didn't ask for a sermon. You asked for relief. You tell him your grief is heavier than sand. You tell him your pain is arrows in your flesh. And you can see it in Eliphaz's face. He doesn't like that. He didn't come all this way to be told his wisdom isn't welcome. He came to fix the problem, to patch the crack in the universe where a righteous man suffered. So he doubles down, and you feel the warmth drain from the circle around you. The silence is over. Now it's words, and words, it turns out, can hurt almost as much as boils. Days pass in a blur of speeches and saws. The sun rises. The flies arrive like they have appointments. Your skin oozes and crusts and cracks again. Someone leaves water at a careful distance, and your friends rotate through their greatest hits. They speak, you answer, they speak again, and every conversation ends where it began. Only now you're more tired. And now we arrive at the part nobody talks about, the exhausting loop, because grief is already isolating. But grief plus accusation, that's a loneliness you can taste. Bildad goes next, because he can't stand Eliphaz having the floor for too long. He sits up straighter, clears his throat, and starts with irritation disguised as wisdom. How long will you say these things? It's not a question, it's a complaint. He talks about how words like yours are a strong wind, empty, loud, annoying. He says God doesn't pervert justice. He says the Almighty doesn't twist what's right. Then he mentions your children, just tosses it out there. If your children sinned, they got what they earned. He doesn't say it with a sneer. He says it like he's quoting a proverb his grandfather taught him, like it's a little household truth you keep in a jar. Your stomach turns. You taste bile. Your hands curl into fists in the ash, nails digging into your palms, because it is taking everything in you not to grab that pottery shard again and do something truly regrettable. Bildad keeps going. If you're pure and upright, he says, surely God will rouse himself for you. Surely he will restore you. He talks about how your beginning was small, but your latter days will be great. He tells you to inquire of former generations, because the ancestors know, tradition knows, history knows, and you're sitting there thinking, I did not bury 10 children to be assigned homework. Bildad quotes the old sayings like they're nails. The papyrus can't grow without marsh. The reed can't thrive without water. The godless are like plants that look strong until they're yanked up. He paints pictures of people who forget God, whose hope is like a spider web. It looks like it holds. It doesn't. He's saying it without saying it. This is what happens to the wicked, and if it's happening to you, you look at him. He won't meet your eyes for long, because if he really looked at you, he'd have to see your face, not a lesson, a person. You answer anyway. You say what any human would say when their life has been crushed and their friends are acting like the jury. You tell them the world isn't that neat, that the wicked sometimes thrive, that thieves sleep well at night, that the tents of destroyers are secure. You say you've seen it with your own eyes. You tell them your pain doesn't fit their tidy categories, and their categories don't care. They don't like that. Nobody likes it when suffering refuses to behave. Eliphaz responds again, more pointed this time. Less sympathy, more edge. He starts listing the kinds of sins people commit, the kinds of corruption that bring trouble. You can hear it in his tone. He has decided the only reason you're arguing is because you're hiding something. He says you're undermining reverence. He says you're using your mouth to condemn yourself. He says your own lips testify against you. It's a classic move. If you defend yourself, that proves you're guilty. Zophar finally jumps in, because patience has never been his spiritual gift. He leans forward, eyes sharp, and speaks like he's delivering a verdict. Should your babble silence men? That's how he opens. Not friend, not brother, not even the basic courtesy of pretending you aren't dying in front of him. Babble. He tells you that God exacts less from you than your guilt deserves. Less. As if this heap of ash and pus and grief is God going easy. Zophar talks about the mysteries of God, about depths too deep to fathom, heights too high to reach. He says if you would only put away sin, if you'd only stretch out your hands and turn back, then you'd lift your face without shame. He promises security, sleep, fearlessness. He talks about lying down with none to make you afraid. You almost laugh, not because it's funny, because it's insane. Sleep, with boils, in a dump, while your children are in the ground. You can't even lie on your side without pain lighting up your whole body. And this man is advertising rest like it's a product. He's basically selling you repent now with better nights. You look at them, these three men who traveled miles to sit with you, and you realize something that makes your throat tighten. They came because they loved you. They stayed silent because they were horrified. They started speaking because they were afraid, not of you, of what you represent. Because if this can happen to you without a reason, then it can happen to them. And that is a thought they cannot live with. So they keep talking. They keep pushing. They keep trying to force your suffering into a shape that doesn't terrify them. And you sit there listening, skin throbbing, jaw clenched, trying not to scream. You answer them again and again, and your answers get sharper. At first you try to be measured. You say you want an audience with God. You say you want to plead your case. You say you want someone, anyone, to stand between you and the Almighty like a mediator. Your friends recoil at that, not physically, but in spirit. They don't like the idea of you speaking to God like you have rights. They want you smaller, quieter, repentant. They want you to accept the narrative they're offering. You sinned, you got caught, and now you're being corrected. It's clean, it's safe, it's wrong. The debates go in circles, and each circle digs deeper into your exhaustion. One day, Eliphaz accuses you outright. He stops hinting. He starts naming crimes. He says you took pledges from people for no reason. He says you stripped the poor of their clothing. He says you withheld water from the weary. He says you sent widows away empty. It's so specific you almost look around like, are you talking about me? Or did you pick a random villain and slap my name on it? You want to say, I fed the hungry. I clothed the naked. I sat in the gate and listened to the case of the stranger. I did the things you're supposed to do, but he talks over you, piling accusation on top of pain like he's trying to smother you with it. Bildad chimes in with more tradition, more insistence that God doesn't reject the blameless. He keeps returning to the same point. If you're suffering, you must be guilty, because his whole mind is built on that foundation. Zophar keeps being Zophar. He talks about how the triumph of the wicked is short, how joy lasts only a moment, how sweetness turns bitter in the stomach. He describes the wicked swallowing evil like food, and how it becomes poison. He's practically acting out the speech, and you can tell he feels satisfied, like he nailed it. Meanwhile, you're sitting in the ash heap thinking, none of this is about me anymore, is it? It's about them. Their need to solve, their need to correct, their need to leave this place believing the world is fair. And your body keeps reminding you that fairness isn't a salve. One afternoon, the wind shifts, and it brings the smell of cooking from the town. Somebody is roasting meat. You can smell the fat sizzling, the smoke carrying seasoning, the sharpness of onions or garlic, something warm and human. Your stomach clenches with hunger and nausea at the same time. You haven't tasted anything but dry bread and bitter water for days. The smell of real food feels like cruelty. Your friends smell it too. Their eyes flick toward the town. Their lives are still waiting for them. Homes, beds, wives, children who are alive. They're sitting with you, but they're also thinking of leaving you. And you can feel that pressure in the way they speak, the way the arguments tighten. They want resolution before they go. They want you to admit something, anything, so they can walk away saying, good. The world makes sense again. So they push harder. They accuse you of arrogance. They accuse you of empty words. They accuse you of daring to question God. And you, sitting there with skin like a battlefield, start to feel something rise that isn't just sadness. It's rage, not the hot, explosive kind. The slow, grinding kind that builds when you're being misunderstood by people who claim to love you. You tell them they are miserable comforters. You say their consolations are like ashes. You say their answers are wind. You tell them they're acting like doctors who prescribe salt water for a broken leg and get offended when you don't feel healed. They don't like being called out. Eliphaz's face hardens. Bildad looks scandalized. Zophar looks like he's been waiting for permission to be even harsher. And you realize, with a cold heaviness, that your friends are not going to stop. They are not going to sit with you in your pain and let it be pain. They are going to turn your suffering into a courtroom. They are going to make you the defendant. And they are going to keep talking until you either confess to sins you didn't commit or collapse from exhaustion. The ash heap is quieter at night, but not peaceful. The air cools, and your sores sting with the change. The flies vanish, replaced by other tiny night noises. Scratching in the refuse, a distant animal cry, the soft shuffling of someone passing far away and pretending not to see you. Your friends lie down nearby, not close enough to touch, close enough to claim they stayed. You stare up at the sky. The stars are too steady. They look indifferent. You listen to the breathing of the three men beside you, and you feel utterly alone anyway, because they're here, but they're not with you. Their bodies are present. Their hearts are somewhere else, building explanations. By morning, they're back at it. Another round, another speech, another attempt to drag you into their tidy moral math. Your throat is raw from answering. Your eyes burn. Your skin feels tight, like it's been shrink-wrapped over pain. You shift in the ash, and a fresh crust cracks open on your elbow. Wetness beads, and you feel that familiar hot sting. Zophar watches it happen and keeps talking. You can't even believe it. You're leaking in front of them, and he's still mid-sermon. That's when something in you snaps into clarity. Not hope, not comfort, resolve. If they're going to turn this into a trial, you're going to speak like a man on trial. If they're going to claim God only strikes the guilty, you're going to say out loud what you've been holding in, because you have nothing left to protect. Not reputation, not wealth, not the comfort of other people's approval. You look at your friends, dusty, earnest, terrified. You look at the ash heap, grey, gritty, stinking of burned leftovers and old death. You look down at your hands, rimmed with ash, nails cracked, skin swollen and raw, and you open your mouth, ready to say the words that polite religion hates, ready to answer them with something sharper than Proverbs, ready to speak back to heaven itself, because if God is listening, you are done whispering. Your mouth opens, and for a second, nothing comes out. Not because you don't have words, because you have too many, stacked up like stones in your chest, and they all want to fall at once. Your tongue feels like old leather. Your lips crack when you move them. The ash you've been breathing for days has coated the inside of your throat, so every sound you make scrapes on the way out. Your friends lean in a fraction, like they're about to catch something fragile. They are wildly unprepared for what you throw. You don't start with a polite rebuttal. You start with the kind of honesty that makes people glance around for an adult, even though you're all adults. You tell them, in a voice that sounds like gravel in a pot, that you are done being treated like a moral math problem. You tell them you know you're not perfect, but you're not what they're describing. And then you do the most scandalous thing a suffering man can do in public. You talk to God, like God is actually there. The wind drifts across the dump, slow and hot, carrying the smell of old smoke and spoiled scraps. A fly lands right on the edge of a saw near your temple like it owns the place. You don't even swat it. You just look out past your friends, past the road, past the little smear of town life in the distance, and you aim your words upward, not like a hymn, like a complaint filed in court. "Does it please you to crush me?" you say, and your voice cracks on crush. Eliphaz flinches as if you slapped him. Bildad's eyes widen, and for a second, he looks like he's watching you step off a roof. Zophar's mouth tightens into a line so straight, it could cut rope. You keep going anyway, because you're already falling, and gravity doesn't negotiate. You tell God it feels like you're being hunted, like you're a target pinned up for practice. Your body is the proof, the boils, the fever, the way your skin has become a map of pain. You gesture at yourself with a hand. That shakes from weakness, and it's a ridiculous motion, because what are you pointing at? Everything. Every inch of you hurts. You tell them, your friends, your God, the sky. Your pain is not a tidy lesson. It's an invasion. The words tumble out sharp and messy. You say God has put you in the wrong, that God has fenced you in, that you try to step forward and you hit a wall, and you try to step back and it's the same wall, and you're stuck in a life that has become a small, airless room. Your friends glance at each other, alarmed, like this is the moment they realize they brought a casserole to a house fire. You cough, and the cough is wet. Your chest burns afterward, and your eyes water. The pottery shard sits beside you, chipped and smeared with old fluid, like some cursed little tool that keeps making cameos. You could pick it up and scrape again. You could keep trying to sand yourself down to something bearable. But you've scraped enough. Now you speak. You tell God you are treated like an enemy. Not a child, not a servant, not even a stranger. An enemy. Like God wakes up and chooses violence, and you're the convenient place to aim it. That's what it feels like. And you say it out loud, right there, with 3 respectable men listening. Eliphaz shifts uncomfortably, as if he's about to cough up a proverb to cover this whole moment like a blanket. You don't let him. You ask for something you've been asking for since the first messenger ran up your road with his horror in his mouth. You ask for a meeting, a court date. You want to know the charges. Because if you're guilty, fine, show you. But if you're not, then you refuse to sit here and accept their invented crimes like you're signing for a package you didn't order. You tell God you want a mediator, someone in the middle, someone who can put a hand on you and a hand on God, and keep you from being crushed like an insect under a sandal. You look at your friends when you say it, and they look away, because that idea terrifies them. A man putting conditions on a conversation with God, a man asking for representation, is the spiritual equivalent of asking to speak to the manager. And you're doing it from a trash pile, covered in sores, with ash stuck in your hair. Your life is humiliating, and your prayer is audacious. The sun drags itself across the sky, and the heat makes the air shimmer above the refuse. Somewhere nearby, something small scuttles through discarded scraps. A dog maybe, a rat, a chicken that has made terrible life choices. Your friend's sandals are clean compared to yours. Your feet are black with ash and grime, and the skin between your toes is cracked. Even sitting still hurts. You shift your weight, and a sore on your hip tears open a little, wet and burning. You hiss through your teeth, and the sound is ugly. Bildad's face pinches like he's smelling something sour. And yes, it's probably you. You tell them, you can't win. If you're guilty, you can't answer God. If you're innocent, you still can't answer God, because the power difference is a mountain. You could build your case out of perfect words, and God could knock it down with a glance. So what do? You do the only thing you have left. You speak anyway. You tell them human life is short, too short. A few breaths, a few meals, a few laughs, and then it's over, and half the time it's pain in the middle. You compare yourself to a hired laborer waiting for the day to end, eyes fixed on the sinking sun, counting minutes. Only your day doesn't end. It just keeps going. Night comes, and instead of rest, you get the special midnight entertainment called your own skin screaming. You lie down when you can lie down, and your bones ache against the hard ground. You turn, and pain lights up. You turn again, and pain lights up somewhere else. Your mind keeps trying to find a position where you're not aware of every inch of your body. There isn't one. Your sheets are ash. Your pillow is nothing. Your mattress is whatever compacted grief feels like when it's mixed with dirt. You tell them your nights stretch out, long and empty, full of tossing and the sound of your own breath catching. You tell them worms live where you live now. Not as a metaphor. Actual worms. The kind that show up when bodies break down and the world takes notice. Your skin forms scabs and breaks again. You watch it happen, fascinated in the worst way. Your own flesh is doing its own little collapse right in front of you. And you say, with a flatness that scares even you, that you don't expect to see good again. Not in this life, not in this body. You're not even bargaining for your old wealth anymore. You want an end, not because you hate life, because you can't find life inside this. Zophar makes a frustrated sound, like a pot about to boil over. He wants to interrupt. He wants to say, stop talking like that. He wants to say, you're going to make it worse. He wants to say, don't say these things out loud. But you look at him, and your eyes are so tired that his words die before they hatch. You keep talking, and now your words turn darker. You talk about Sheol, the place of the dead, like it's a room you're trying to get into. You talk about the grave like it's a bed with clean sheets. You say you wish God would hide you there, just put you away for a while. Let the storm pass, and then remember you. You say it like you're asking someone to store you on a shelf until the world stops being so loud. Eliphaz presses his lips together, as if trying to physically hold in his theology. Bildad stares at the ground. Zophar stares at you like you're a problem that refuses to be solved. The town in the distance keeps functioning. Somebody's donkey brays. Somebody's child laughs. The sound is thin, carried on the wind, and it feels like hearing music from a house you're locked out of. You stare at your hands and remember when they were strong, when they held cups of wine and reins and your children's heads when you blessed them. Now your fingernails are cracked. The skin around them is split. You can see a little dried blood in the creases. You flex your fingers and your knuckles ache. Your whole body has become a slow complaint. You look up again and you say, louder now, that God has counted you as an enemy, that God has broken you down on every side, that God has uprooted your hope like a plant yanked out of soil. And you don't say it with a poet's distance. You say it with the blunt rage of a man who has stared at his own losses so long they've become familiar. You talk about how even your own household has turned strange. Servants don't answer you. Children in the street mock you. People you used to feed now wrinkle their noses when you pass, like you've become a smell that won't wash out. Even your breath is offensive to your wife. You say it out loud, and it hangs there, awful and intimate. You can taste the metal of your own sickness on your tongue. Your friends shift, uncomfortable, because there are some humiliations that don't belong in polite conversation. Your life is no longer polite. You tell them your bones cling to your skin, that your gums have pulled back, that you can feel the outline of yourself, sharp and unfamiliar. You're disappearing while you're still breathing. You look at your friends and ask them, with a bitterness that has nothing left to sweeten it, why they keep chasing you like hunters, why they keep tearing at you with words, why they can't just stop. You say, have pity. And for a heartbeat, your voice sounds almost normal, almost like the man you used to be. Then the next breath comes with pain, and the normal vanishes again. The sky stays blank, no voice, no answer, just sun and wind, and the dump doing what dumps do. Your friends blink like they've been slapped by your desperation. Eliphaz finally opens his mouth. He tries to bring it back to order. He tells you, again, that God doesn't do this to the blameless. He says it more firmly now because he's panicking. He needs you to stop talking like God is your opponent. He needs the universe to go back into its box. You stare at him, and you feel something cold settle in your chest, because his words don't land like comfort. They land like betrayal. He's not hearing you. He's defending an idea. You tell him you know what people say. You know the speeches. You know the tidy little sayings about the wicked being short-lived, about evil collapsing under its own weight. You've heard them at the gate, in the market, at feasts where everyone nodded and felt morally hydrated. You know all of it. And you say, with a tired fury, that you've seen the wicked live long. You've seen them grow old. You've seen their children dancing around them, their houses safe, their fields producing. You've seen them die in comfort, full of food and wine, surrounded by family. And you've seen good people get crushed. You've seen it. You've lived it. Your friends' faces harden, because now you're not only defending yourself, now you're poking at the entire system of good things happen to good people. You're knocking on it, and it's sounding hollow. Zophar looks like he's about to leap up and start shouting. He doesn't, but his hands clench in his robe. Bildad swallows hard. Eliphaz's eyes narrow. They want to correct you so badly they can taste it. But you're past correction. You're describing reality. The kind of reality that doesn't care about your friends' favorite sayings. You tell them people mock God and still prosper. They say, leave us alone. And their barns are full. They live like there's no judge and nothing happens to them. Then they die, and they're carried to the grave with honor, while you, who offered sacrifices, who feared God, who tried to live clean, are sitting in garbage, scratching yourself with broken pottery. You laugh once, and it comes out like a cough. It's a nasty sound, not joyful, more like your body rejected the concept of fairness and expelled it violently. You tell your friends their comfort is a lie, not because they're trying to hurt you, because they're trying to make pain behave. And pain doesn't. The day drags. Heat presses down. Your sores itch like fire under the skin, and the urge to scratch is constant, like a background noise you can't turn off. You pick up the pottery shard again, not to dramatize anything, but because the itch is driving you out of your mind. You scrape the edge of a boil until it weeps. The relief lasts half a second. Then it burns. It always burns. Eliphaz watches you do it, and for a flicker of a moment, he looks sick. Good. Let him feel it. Let him take your reality home with him, stuck under his fingernails. You keep speaking, because silence is where their accusations grow. You tell them you want your words written down, not because you're trying to be famous, because you're trying to survive being misunderstood. You want a record, something carved into stone, hammered in with iron, so that long after your dust, the truth remains. You did not do what they're saying. You want it etched somewhere permanent, because everyone around you is acting like your suffering is proof of guilt. You want the world to remember that suffering is not evidence, it's just suffering. Your voice shakes when you say it, and you hate that it shakes, because it makes you sound weak. You are weak. You haven't eaten well in days. Your body is fighting itself. Your strength is leaking out of you in sweat and fever and open sores. But your words come anyway, and now you say something that makes your friends freeze. You say you know there is someone who will stand up for you, a redeemer, a witness, someone who sees what's happening and will speak when you can't. You don't fully explain how you know. You just say it, like a man clinging to the last plank in a flood. You say that after your skin is destroyed, still, you will see. It's not a neat statement. It's jagged. It's hope jammed into the middle of despair like a splinter of light. Your friends don't know what to do with it. It doesn't fit their argument. It doesn't fit your misery either. But it comes out, and for a moment, the ash heap feels slightly less like the end of the world. Then the pain returns, as it always does, with no respect for your moments of meaning. Bildad clears his throat. Eager to regain control, he goes right back to describing the fate of the wicked, like a man reading from a scroll titled Consequences, a Beginner's Guide. He talks about lamps going out. He talks about traps. He talks about terror chasing sinners down the street like an angry dog. He's building a picture, and you can tell he's proud of it. He wants you to look at his painting and see yourself in it. You look at him and feel your jaw tighten. You tell him he is speaking to you like you're stupid, like you haven't lived in the same world he has, like you haven't watched storms destroy crops for no reason at all, like you haven't watched a child get sick and die while a thief sleeps. You tell him his speeches are cruel, not loud cruel, quiet cruel, the kind that smiles while it stabs. Zophar jumps in again, because he cannot resist the sound of his own certainty. He tells you wickedness is sweet in the mouth, but turns to poison in the stomach. He describes evil like food that makes you vomit later. He says God will make the wicked spit it out. He says heaven will expose their guilt. He's practically salivating over the idea of justice happening to someone else. You stare at him and you think, he is enjoying this, not your pain. The concept of a universe where pain always means guilt. It makes him feel safe. You tell him, flatly, that he is wrong. And the word wrong sounds like a slap. Zophar's face flushes, his nostrils flare. He looks like a man who has never been told no in his life and is now discovering it exists. Your friends are no longer comforting you. They're debating you. It's become a contest, and you're the prize nobody asked for. Your body sags with exhaustion. Your eyes sting from sun and dryness. There's grit in your lashes. You blink, and it feels like sandpaper. A fly crawls across your cheek, and you let it, because moving your hand takes too much effort. You think of your children again, because of course you do. They're everywhere. Every silence contains them. Every pause is where they should be speaking. You can almost hear their feet in your house, their laughter in the courtyard, the little squabbles that used to annoy you and now feel like treasures. And your friends, these men, keep turning your grief into a moral lecture. You look at them and you say something that would get you uninvited from every religious dinner party forever. You tell them you wish God would stop watching you. Just for a second, look away. Give you enough space to swallow your spit without God counting it, because it feels like you are being monitored, examined, weighed. You say it feels like God is obsessed with catching you doing something wrong, and you're so tired, so unbelievably tired. Your words start sliding into images, because plain speech can't hold what you're trying to say. You talk about being poured out like milk and curdled like cheese. Your skin and flesh clothed on bones. You talk about God knitting you together and then deciding to unravel you. It's grotesque, and it's honest. You're describing your own life like a craft project that got ripped apart in anger. Your friends sit stiffly, listening, their faces caught between horror and offense. You look at the sky and you tell God you know God has power. You're not denying that. You're not pretending you can win. You're saying you don't understand why the power is aimed at you. You say if you wash yourself with snow, if you scrub until your hands are raw, still God will plunge you into a pit. Still your own clothes would hate you. The imagery is ridiculous and vivid. You can practically see it. You trying to get clean, and the universe grabbing you by the ankle and dragging you back into filth. You say you need someone who can arbitrate, someone who can stop God's rod long enough for you to speak without terror. Your friends hate this. They hate it because it makes God sound like a threat. They want God to be predictable. They want God to be safe. But you are living in a world where God feels like a storm that noticed your name. The day shifts toward evening. The heat loosens a little. The dump cools, and the cooling makes your sores sting like they're waking up again. You shiver, even though it's not cold enough for shivering. Fever does what it wants. Your friends pull their robes tighter and glance toward town again, like they can smell dinner. The smell of cooking returns, faint but real. Meat, smoke, something warm. Your stomach tightens and then rolls with nausea. Hunger and sickness are now roommates in your gut, and they hate each other. You speak again, because your friends are waiting you out. They want you to stop. They want you to wear yourself down until you agree with them. But you've reached a point where agreement would be a lie, and you are too broken to lie politely. You tell them if they were in your place, they'd be talking too. They'd be piling up words, shaking their heads, pointing fingers. They'd be clever and clean while you bled. You tell them they've become like a wadi in summer, promising water from a distance, giving dust up close. Eliphaz's cheeks tighten at that. He doesn't like poetry when it's aimed at him. You look at him and say, "Teach me." It comes out like a challenge. Show me what I did. Make it clear. Stop circling like vultures and bring proof. because you can't repent of a crime you didn't commit. You can't confess to make them feel better. You can't buy their comfort with your integrity. Your voice rises, and it costs you. Your throat burns. You cough again, harsher this time. And for a moment, you see stars. Not the kind in the sky, the kind behind your eyes when your body decides to shut off the lights. You swallow thickly. There's a taste in your mouth like rust. Your friends are silent, not because they're moved, but because they're recalculating. They didn't expect you to fight like this. They expected weeping, maybe. They expected collapse. They expected you to accept their framework and apologize for making them uncomfortable. Instead, you're demanding a hearing. You're demanding evidence. You're demanding God show up. The audacity of it sits in the air like smoke. You sit there in the ash heap, breathing shallowly, listening to your own heartbeat thud in your ears. Your body is failing, but your mind is bright with anger and grief. That combination is exhausting. It also makes you fearless. Because what's left to take? You've already buried everything. You tell them the earth is handed over to the wicked sometimes. You say justice looks asleep. You say judges can be blind. You say the innocent can be mocked. You say it all out loud, and the world doesn't split open. No lightning, no immediate divine correction. Just your friends staring like you've started speaking a language they don't recognize. Your words become a river now. You talk about the poor being pushed off the road. You talk about widows and fatherless children and people trying to survive in a world that does not care. You describe them huddling at night with no clothes, no shelter, wet from rain, clinging to rocks for warmth like animals. You say you've seen it. You've seen people crushed and nothing happened to their crushers. And you say, why? Not as a philosophical exercise, as a man with dirt under his nails and grief in his mouth. Why do the wicked live? Why do they grow old? Why do they die in peace? Why do you, who tried to do right, sit here rotting? Your friends don't answer. They can't. They can only repeat themselves. And repetition is a thin tool against raw reality. Night comes. The dump changes sounds. The daytime buzz of flies fades, replaced by the soft movement of creatures that prefer darkness. The air cools and smells sharper, like smoke and waste and the sour tang of infection. Your friends settle into their sleeping positions nearby, awkward and stiff, like men camping without wanting to admit they're camping. You don't really sleep. You drift in and out, jerking awake when your skin pulls, or a cramp hits your leg. Your dreams, when they come, are cruel. You see your children alive for a second. You reach for them. You wake up with your hand in ash. By morning, your mouth is dry enough to crack. Your tongue sticks to your teeth. Someone leaves water, and you sip it slowly, and it tastes like clay and distance. Your friends wake too, rubbing sleep out of their eyes like they're about to start another day of arguing. Another day of trying to fix your life with sentences. You look at them and feel a wave of disgust so strong it surprises you. Not because they're evil, because they're refusing to see you. They're refusing to let you be innocent and wounded. They want you guilty because guilty means controllable. So you speak again, before they can start. You tell them you are signing your name. You are putting your mark on your statement. You are done defending yourself in fragments. You want God to answer. You want God to respond to the indictment you've been living inside. You say you would carry your case like a crown. You would walk into God's presence and lay it out. You would declare every step you've taken, because you are not afraid of the truth. You are afraid of silence. You are afraid of being crushed without being heard. Your friends stare, stunned by the confidence in your broken body. You look ridiculous, honestly. You're a sick man sitting in garbage, talking like a prince filing legal documents against a hurricane. And yet your words have weight. They land. They rattle around in the air between you all. Eliphaz finally responds, and now his voice has lost all softness. The patience is gone. He accuses you harder. He insists you've sinned. He implies your righteousness was performance. He suggests you're only upset because you got caught. It's nasty. It's insulting. It's also, in a twisted way, easier to hear than the gentle version. At least the cruelty is honest now. You snap back because your restraint has been scraped away along with your skin. You call them worthless physicians. You say their wisdom is stupidity dressed up in nice robes. You tell them to be quiet because silence would be more intelligent. Zophar looks like he might actually explode. Bildad mutters something about God's majesty, like majesty is supposed to erase your boils. You lift your chin slightly and tell them you know God is mighty. You know God can do whatever God wants. That's not the question. The question is why God is doing this to you. And now you say something that makes even you pause. You say, even if God kills me, I will still speak. It's not bravado. It's a man with nothing left to lose refusing to lie. You say you will maintain your ways. You will not pretend guilt to make them comfortable. Your friends sit rigid, horrified, because this is dangerous. Not in a vague way, in a real way. You're poking the Almighty with a stick, and they're sitting close enough to get hit by lightning too. Your voice drops, and you talk to God again, more quietly now. Not gentler, just lower. You ask God to withdraw God's hand, to stop terrifying you long enough for you to speak. You ask for two things, relief from the pain and freedom from fear. Then you say, call, and I will answer. Or, let me speak, and you answer. You're offering terms. You're setting up a courtroom exchange. It's wild. It's brave. It's the prayer of a man who can't do flattery anymore. Your friends can hardly breathe. Eliphaz looks like he swallowed a thorn. Bildad's eyes dart around, as if he expects someone to pop out and arrest you for audacity. Zophar shakes his head slowly, disgusted, like you're a man, spitting on sacred ground. But you're not spitting. You're bleeding. And bleeding makes people uncomfortable, because it's honest. The day moves again. Time in the ash heap is repetitive. Sun, heat, pain, arguments. Then the same thing in reverse. Your body continues its slow collapse, punctuated by little fresh humiliations. A sore on your neck that won't stop oozing. A cramp in your calf that knots hard enough to make you gasp. The itch that turns into burning when you scratch. The taste in your mouth that never quite goes away. You talk anyway, and your words keep changing shape, moving from accusation to lament to fierce insistence. You describe God as a lion tearing you, as an archer shooting arrows into your kidneys, as a warrior breaking you with breach after breach. You use violent imagery because that's what it feels like. Not a gentle lesson, a siege. You say God has stripped your honor. God has taken the crown off your head. God has made you a byword. People point and whisper and feel better about their own lives. You've become the cautionary tale. You've become the remember what happened to him. Your friends don't deny it because they've seen it too. They just want it to be your fault. You say you want to know what God has against you. What is the charge? What is the hidden sin they keep insisting exists? You ask if God is hunting you for mistakes from your youth, like God has been keeping a list and finally decided to collect. You say it feels like your feet are in stocks, like your steps are watched, like God has drawn a circle around you and told you you're not allowed to leave. You look down at your feet, filthy and cracked, and the image feels too accurate. You are fenced in. not by wood, by reality. At one point, your voice breaks, and you sound suddenly young. You say you miss the days when God's lamp shone over your head, when you walked through darkness and felt guided, when you sat among people and they listened, not because you demanded it, but because your life had weight. You remember being respected in the gate. You remember helping people. You remember laughter. You remember your own children climbing into your lap. The memory is so vivid, you can almost smell your house again. Bread, wool, oil, the warm scent of living bodies. Then the wind shifts and brings you back to the dump, where everything smells like ash and sickness. You blink hard. Your eyes sting. Your friends watch you remember, and for a moment, their faces soften. Then the fear returns, and the softness disappears, because if you were that man, and you're now this man, what does that mean for them? So they keep talking, they keep accusing, they keep pushing, and you keep answering, because you cannot let their version of you be the last word. You insist again that you cared for the poor, that you took in the stranger, that you protected the widow, that you didn't use your power to crush people, that you didn't put your trust in gold, that you didn't rejoice when enemies fell, that you didn't hide sin like a thief hiding stolen goods. You list your life like you're reading out your own testimony, item by item, as if the air itself needs to hear it. And the list is long, because you lived a full life before it shattered. Your friends sit quiet through parts of it, not because they agree, but because the sheer detail makes it harder to dismiss you as a cartoon villain. You are not speaking in vague claims. You're speaking like a man who remembers his own hands. And now you do something even more dangerous. You offer a curse on yourself. You say, in effect, if I did these things, let disaster come. If your heart was led astray, let your wife belong to another. If you withheld bread, let your fields produce thorns. If you took advantage of the helpless, let your arm be broken. You say it with a ferocity that makes the air feel tight, because a man lying doesn't talk like this. A man performing doesn't dare invite destruction. Only a man who believes his own innocence calls down consequences as proof. Eliphaz looks shaken, though he tries to hide it. Bildad swallows. Zophar's eyes flicker with something like uncertainty, and he hates himself for it. You sit back slightly, and the movement costs you. Your ribs ache. Your spine throbs. Your skin pulls tight over swelling. Your whole body is one long complaint, and still you've spoken. You've said what polite people don't say. You've accused God. You've demanded a hearing. You've refused to accept your friend's tidy little explanation. The sky remains stubbornly silent. No voice, no thunder, no sudden comfort. Just the sun doing what it does, and the ash heap doing what it does, and three friends sitting there like men who came to fix something and realized it can't be fixed with words. And you, still breathing, still itching, still hurting, still awake in the middle of the mystery, daring to speak directly into it. Your friends sit there, quiet for a moment, as if the argument finally ran out of road. Not ended, just paused. A strange hush settles over the dump, broken only by the faint buzz of a stubborn fly, and the far-off sound of ordinary life continuing without you. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, and it leaves a grey smear across your skin. Ash on ash. You stare at the empty sky, like you're waiting for someone to step out from behind it. And for the first time in days, nobody talks. Not because peace has arrived, because even bad advice needs a moment to recover after you've said the unsayable out loud. The silence doesn't feel peaceful. It feels loaded, like the air is holding its breath just to see what you'll do next. You sit there with ash on your skin and dried fluid at the edges of sores that refuse to close, staring at a sky that has been aggressively unhelpful for weeks. Even the flies seem to buzz a little quieter, like they also don't want to get involved. A gust of wind slides across the ash heap, and it's not the usual lazy breeze. This one has teeth. It lifts grit off the ground and flicks it into your eyes, into your cracked lips, into every open place on your body, like it's personally offended you still have nerve endings. Your friends straighten, instinctive, the way men do when weather changes and they suddenly remember roofs exist. The wind comes again, harder. It pushes at robes and hair and loose scraps of trash, and the dump responds by throwing its contents into the air in a disgusting little celebration. Old ash, dry straw, bits of brittle bone, something that might be a rag and might be something worse. Your throat tightens when you inhale, and you cough, because of course you do. The cough scrapes your chest raw, and the taste in your mouth turns metallic. Then the light shifts. Not sunset shifts. It's more like someone dragged a dark cloth across the sun without asking anybody's permission. The horizon smudges. The air goes weirdly heavy for a heartbeat, and you can feel every hair on your arms trying to stand up despite the grime weighing it down. Your friends look up at the same time, because whatever is happening is not subtle. Eliphaz's face goes pale under the dust. Bildad's mouth opens a little, like he wants to speak, but he can't find a safe sentence fast enough. Zophar's eyes dart around, searching for an explanation he can control. The wind stops being wind. It becomes a presence. It circles and gathers like a living thing deciding where to land. And the ash heap, your lovely little outdoor sickbed, turns into a swirling, stinging cloud that slaps your cheeks and gets under your eyelids. You squint, tears instantly forming, and the tears cut tracks through the grime. You taste dirt, you taste old smoke, you taste the dump, and right in the middle of that, the sound comes. Not a normal voice, not someone calling from down the road. It's a voice wrapped in weather, carried in the throat of a whirlwind, pressing against your bones more than your ears. It doesn't start with comfort. It doesn't start with, "I'm sorry." It doesn't start with, "Here's why." It starts like a slap. "Who is this?" the voice thunders. That darkens counsel with words without knowledge. Your friends flinch like the words physically hit them. You flinch too, because you're human, and humans flinch when the universe suddenly speaks out loud. The wind whips around you, and the grit is so thick you can barely keep your eyes open. Your skin, already wrecked, is now getting exfoliated by airborne sand. It's the worst spa treatment ever invented. The voice doesn't pause to ask if you're ready. It doesn't check your posture. It doesn't wait for you to stop shaking. It says, "Brace yourself like a man." Which is honestly hilarious advice to give a man sitting in a trash pile covered in boils, holding a pottery shard like it's a life tool. But there it is. The command lands in your chest like a weight. "I will question you," the voice says, "and you will answer me. This is the court date you demanded, not the one you pictured." The whirlwind tightens, and the world shrinks down to wind, dust, and that voice. Your friends are still there somewhere. You can hear the snap of robes and the grit crunching under sandals, but their faces are blurred shapes behind the blowing ash. You're barely aware of your own body, except for the way every sore burns under the sand. You try to swallow and discover your mouth is too dry for it. The voice comes again, steady as stone. "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth?" The words roll through you like thunder through a valley. You blink grit away, eyes watering, and your mind scrambles for an answer that isn't nonsense. You weren't anywhere. You didn't exist. The voice doesn't wait for you to say it. Tell me, if you have understanding, it continues. Who determined its measurements? Who stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? It's not a lecture. It's not an explanation. It's the feeling of being grabbed by the collar and yanked out of your tiny personal misery for one terrifying, enormous second. You're still sitting in ash. You're still sick. But suddenly, your life feels small. Not meaningless. Just small. The voice turns, like the whirlwind itself is turning pages. Who shut in the sea with doors when it burst out from the womb? You can almost see it. The sea, massive and wild, flooding out like an animal breaking loose. Who made clouds its garment, the voice says, and thick darkness its swaddling band? Swaddling band. Like the ocean is a baby that needed to be wrapped up so it wouldn't destroy everything immediately. The wind lashes your face again, and you taste more grit. Your tongue feels like dried leather. The voice presses on. Have you commanded the morning since your days began? Have you caused the dawn to know its place? The question is ridiculous. You can't command your own skin to stop itching. And this voice is asking if you've ever told sunrise where to clock in. Have you entered into the springs of the sea, it says, or walked in the recesses of the deep? You can't even walk across the dump without pain shooting up your legs. The deep sea is not on your schedule. Have the gates of death been revealed to you? Have you seen the gates of deep darkness? Your stomach twists at that because you've been talking about death like it's a room you want to rent. This voice talks about it like it's a place with doors and gates and depth you can't fathom. The whirlwind groans around you, and for a moment the sound is like 1,000 voices layered together. The voice continues, unhurried. Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth? Declare, if you know it all. That last line lands with a bite, not cruel, just clean, like truth spoken without any need to soften itself for your feelings. The questions keep coming, not like a man arguing, but like a storm laying down reality. Where is the way to the dwelling of light? And where is the place of darkness that you may take it to its territory? You feel absurd sitting there because you've been demanding answers like you're negotiating. Now the universe is asking you if you know where light lives. It's not mocking you. It's exposing scale. Have you entered the storehouses of the snow, the voice says, or seen the storehouses of the hail? Storehouses. Like weather is inventory. Like there are rooms somewhere stacked with snow, neatly piled, waiting for the right moment to spill. Your mind tries to picture it and fails. All you can picture is the ash heap, the pottery shard, and your own skin splitting when you move. The voice moves to things you actually recognize. Who has cleft a channel for the torrents of rain? Who has made a way for the thunderbolt? Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades, it asks, or loose the cords of Orion? You look up, squinting through grit and shadow, and you realize the question isn't about whether you've studied the stars. It's about whether you can touch them, whether you can pull them like ropes. You can't even pull your life back together. Can you lead forth the constellations in their season? Do you know the ordinances of the heavens? Can you establish their rule on the earth? The wind surges again, and your robe slaps against your legs. It stings where the fabric hits sores. You grit your teeth and immediately regret it, because grit is literally in your teeth. The voice lowers, not softer, closer. Can you lift up your voice to the clouds, that a flood of waters may cover you? Can you send forth lightnings, that they may go and say to you, Here we are. Lightning reporting for duty. Weather with a sense of order you don't control. You've been living in chaos, and this voice is describing a world that is wild but governed, not by you. The questions pour on, and your brain starts to feel like it's being rinsed out, not cleaned, overwhelmed. Who has put wisdom in the inward parts? Who has given understanding to the mind? Who can number the clouds by wisdom? Who can tilt the waterskins of the heavens when the dust runs into a mass and the clods stick fast together? The words paint images you can almost feel. Dust turning to mud, ground clumping, rain coming down so hard it turns the world into a stuck mess. You've walked through that kind of mud. You've smelled it. You've scraped it off your feet. You thought you knew the world because you lived in it. Now the world is being described like a living mechanism you barely notice. The voice shifts again. Animals. The voice starts talking about hunting, feeding, wildness. Things you've overseen from a distance when you were wealthy. Now the questions drag you right into the teeth of it. Can you hunt the prey for the lion? Can you satisfy the appetite of the young lions when they crouch in their dens? Your mind flashes to a lion's breath, hot and rank, and the sound of meat tearing. You've never been that close. You've paid men who have. Who provides for the raven its prey? The voice asks, when its young ones cry to God. You've heard ravens. You've watched them hop around carcasses. You've thrown stones at them probably. And now you're being asked if you're the one feeding them. You're not. The whirlwind shifts, and your eyes sting again. Your friends are still silent. Whatever theology they were about to serve you has died in their throats. No one interrupts a whirlwind. The questions keep coming, and they get stranger. Do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you observe the carving of the deer? Your brain tries to follow the image. High cliffs, cold air, animals birthing in places no human sees. It's intimate, hidden, and completely outside your control. Can you number the months that they fulfill? Do you know the time when they bring forth? You can barely track your own days anymore. Pain makes time syrupy. The voice is talking about months, seasons, precise timing in wilderness you never visit. Then the voice turns to wild donkeys, because apparently the universe has strong opinions about untamed animals. Who has let the wild donkey go free? Who has loosed the bonds of the swift donkey? You can almost hear the bray, obnoxious and proud. You can see it kicking up dust, refusing to be useful. It's the ancient version of someone quitting their job mid-shift and walking out with zero notice. The voice continues, I have given it the wilderness for its home. It laughs at the commotion of the city. It does not hear the shouts of the driver. You feel that, weirdly, because you've been sitting in the commotion of human judgment, and it hasn't helped. This donkey just runs. No speeches, no accusations, just wildness, alive and unbothered. And then the voice goes for the big one, the animal everyone respects because it can ruin your entire day. Is the wild ox willing to serve you? Will he spend the night at your manger? Can you bind him in the furrow with ropes? Will he harrow the valleys after you? Your mind supplies the image. A massive animal, muscles like boulders, eyes blank with power, refusing to cooperate. You've owned oxen. You've watched men handle them carefully, because one wrong move and your ribs are history. The voice asks, almost casually, will you depend on him because his strength is great? Will you leave to him your labor? The whirlwind roars, and you shiver, not from cold, from the feeling of being seen through. You wanted a debate. You wanted a neat answer. You're getting questions that expose how little you command, even on your best day. The voice pivots again, and suddenly, ostriches. Because why not? The wings of the ostrich wave proudly, the voice says. But are they the pinions and plumage of love? The phrasing is strange, almost teasing. You can't tell if you're being invited to laugh or warned not to. The voice continues anyway. It leaves its eggs to the earth and lets them be warmed on the ground. It forgets that a foot may crush them. It deals cruelly with its young, as if they were not its own. You can practically see it. Big bird, tiny brain, running around like it has important errands, while abandoning its eggs like a negligent landlord. The voice says, because God has made it forget wisdom. And yet, when it rouses itself to run, the voice adds, it laughs at the horse and the rider. It's ridiculous. It's also true. Some creatures are foolish and fast and survive anyway. You've been wise and careful, and look at you. Then the questions turn sharp and familiar. Horses, war, men who think they control things. Do you give the horse his might? Do you clothe his neck with a mane? Do you make him leap like a locust? You hear it in your mind, the snort, the stamp, the creak of leather tack, the smell of sweat and animal heat. The voice describes the war horse with terrifying affection. It paws in the valley and exults in his strength. He goes out to meet the weapons. He laughs at fear. That line lands like a stone. Laughs at fear. You haven't laughed at fear. You've been marinating in it. The voice keeps going. He does not turn back from the sword. On him rattle the quiver, the flashing spear, and the javelin. You can almost hear the metal. You can almost feel the vibration of hooves in your chest. It's power, not yours, barely controlled by the men who ride it. The whirlwind shifts, and the grit eases for half a second. You inhale, and the air still tastes like dust and old smoke, but at least it doesn't feel like you're chewing sand. The voice moves to the sky. Is it by your understanding that the hawk soars? Does the eagle mount up at your command and make his nest on high? You picture it, an eagle on a cliff, looking down at the world like it's a map, tearing meat with calm precision. You've never commanded an eagle. You've barely commanded your own servants lately, and even that ended when you became unclean and got exiled to the dump. The voice pauses, not because it's done, because it's giving you space to feel the weight of all of it. And you do. You feel it in your ribs, in your throat, in the way your hands suddenly seem useless. Your pottery shard lies in the ash beside you, pathetic and small. Your arguments, your speeches, your demands, they're still inside you, but they're losing their sharpness. Not because you've been defeated in a debate, because you've been met by something too large to debate. The voice speaks again, and it's aimed at you like a spotlight. Shall a fault finder contend with the Almighty? He who argues with God, let him answer. Your mouth goes dry in a new way, not sickness dry, fear dry. You try to force saliva, and your body produces almost nothing, like it's also intimidated. Your friends are statues. Nobody coughs. Nobody shifts. Even the trash around you seems to have settled, as if the dump itself is listening. You stare into the whirlwind, eyes watering, and you realize you have no answer that doesn't sound stupid. You open your mouth. What comes out is smaller than you. Behold, you say, and your voice sounds thin against the wind. I am of small account. You swallow, wincing because your throat is raw. What shall I answer you? You lift your hand, shaking, dirty, and press it to your mouth. It's not a gesture of politeness. It's a man physically stopping himself from spilling more words into a storm. I lay my hand on my mouth. you manage. I have spoken once, and I will not answer. Twice, but I will proceed no further. The wind circles. The presence doesn't leave. If anything, it feels closer, like the whirlwind leans in. You half expect it to end there, like you tapped out, and now the universe will go, "All right, fair." No, the voice comes again, and it's not done. It doesn't say, "Good effort." It doesn't say, "Thank you for sharing." It says again, "Brace yourself like a man." You almost laugh, because what else can you do? It's like being told to stay calm while your house is actively on fire. "I will question you," the voice says, "and you will make it known to me." Then it goes straight for the heart of what you wanted. Will you even put me in the wrong? Will you condemn me that you may be in the right? That hits you low, under the ribs, because yes, you wanted God to show up. You wanted to defend yourself. You wanted the charges. You also wanted to be declared right, and you wanted your suffering to be explained in a way that made sense of your pain. The voice doesn't give you that. Instead, it asks if you're trying to drag God into your own courtroom and force a verdict. The whirlwind roars, and the voice presses on. Have you an arm like God? Can you thunder with a voice like His? The words vibrate in the air. You can feel them in your teeth. Your own voice, a few days ago, sounded like gravel in a pot. This voice sounds like the sky remembering it has lungs. Then the questions get terrifying. Adorn yourself with majesty and dignity, the voice says. Clothe yourself with glory and splendor. Pour out the overflowings of your anger and look on everyone who is proud and abase him. It's not a suggestion. It's a challenge. Go ahead. Run the world then. Handle pride. Handle violence. Handle the mess humans make and the mess nature makes and the mess you can't even name. You want to argue with the one who holds all of it. Try holding it. You sit there, heart pounding, and you realize your anger was real. Your grief was real. Your accusations were not play acting. But your ability to govern anything beyond your own breath is basically zero. The voice says, then will I also acknowledge to you that your own right hand can save you. And the silence after that line is brutal, because your right hand can't save you. Your right hand is cracked, dirty and trembling. It can scrape boils with pottery. That's what it can do. The whirlwind shifts again, and the voice moves into something that feels like a door opening onto a darker room. Behold, it says, Behemoth. You feel your stomach tighten. The name itself sounds heavy, like an animal that makes the ground regret being ground. Which I made as I made you, the voice says. He eats grass like an ox. You try to picture this thing, an ox that is not an ox. Grass eating, sure, normal detail, and yet your skin prickles like your body knows normal is not what's coming. Behold, his strength in his loins, the voice continues. His power in the muscles of his belly. He makes his tail stiff like a cedar. A cedar. That's not a tail. That's a whole tree. You can almost hear your own brain sputtering, trying to file this under things that exist without it catching fire. The sinews of his thighs are knit together. His bones are tubes of bronze. His limbs like bars of iron. The whirlwind makes the ash heap shudder, and you find yourself gripping the ground, fingers digging into dirt like you're trying to anchor. The voice says, He is the first of the works of God. Let him who made him bring near his sword. As if even the maker approaches this thing with a weapon. The voice describes rivers, reeds, lotuses, marshes. Behemoth lying under shade like it owns the entire concept of shade. The river is turbulent, the voice says, and he is not frightened. He is confident though Jordan rushes against his mouth. You can't keep the picture stable in your head. It keeps expanding. It keeps turning into something too large, too solid, too alive. Something that doesn't care about your suffering, not because it's cruel, but because it's an animal made of power, doing what it does. Then the voice turns, and the turn is colder. It says one word that makes your skin tighten. Leviathan. Even your friends react. A sharp inhale from someone, maybe Bildad, like he just remembered a childhood story told around a fire, the kind that makes kids sleep with their eyes open. The voice asks, almost casually, "Can you draw out Leviathan with a fishhook?" Your mind coughs up the image. You, on the edge of water, holding a little line, trying to snag a sea monster. It's so absurd it would be funny if it weren't so terrifying. Can you press down his tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope in his nose? Can you pierce his jaw with a hook? The voice is listing human tactics like it's reading a catalogue of ways to embarrass yourself. Will it beg you for mercy? Will it speak softly to you? Will it make a covenant with you? Will you take it for a servant forever? The questions are almost taunting now, not aimed at your pain, aimed at your illusion of control. The voice describes Leviathan like it's describing a nightmare with scales. No one is so fierce that he dares to stir him up. The whirlwind hisses, and the grit swirls again, and you blink hard. Who then, the voice asks, is he who can stand before me? That line doesn't need extra volume. It lands on you with the quiet weight of inevitability. The voice keeps going, describing Leviathan's body in grotesque detail. His scales shut up tightly like armor. Air can't pass between them. His sneezes flash forth light. His eyes are like the eyelids of the dawn. Out of his mouth go flaming torches. Sparks of fire leap forth. You don't know if you're supposed to take it as literal fire or as the kind of terror that feels like fire. Either way, your mouth is dry again. Your hands are still pressed to your lips, as if that's going to keep your heart from trying to escape your chest. The voice says smoke pours from his nostrils, as from a boiling pot. His breath kindles coals. A flame comes from his mouth. You can almost smell it. Hot, acrid, like burned hair and scorched earth. Your brain supplies the sound too, a low, monstrous exhale that makes men regret being born. And the voice doesn't describe Leviathan like a villain in a story. It describes him like a part of the world, a piece of creation that exists without asking permission from your sense of safety. On earth there is not his like, the voice says. A creature without fear. He sees everything that is high. He is king over all the sons of pride. The wind surges, and for a moment the ash heap feels like it might lift and scatter. Your robe snaps against your legs. Your sores sting. Your eyes water so much you can't tell if you're crying or just being sandblasted into humility. You sit there, barely breathing, and it hits you. What you asked for. You wanted God to come down and explain. You wanted a neat line from your righteousness to your suffering, like a rope you could hold. Instead, you're being shown a world that is enormous and wild and full of things you cannot manage. A world where mountain goats give birth on cliffs without your knowledge, where ravens get fed without your help, where the sea has doors, where snow is stored somewhere beyond your reach, where behemoth chews grass like it's nothing, where Leviathan wears terror like jewelry, and somehow, in the middle of all of it, the voice keeps speaking as if this wildness is not chaos, as if it's held, as if it belongs to someone who can hold it. The whirlwind begins to ease, not vanish, just loosen its grip, like a fist relaxing one finger at a time. The dust still moves, but it stops, trying to skin you alive. Light leaks back into the sky, thin at first, then steadier. Your friends are visible again. Eliphaz is kneeling because his legs gave up pretending. Bildad's face is streaked with dust and sweat, eyes wide like a man who just realized he's been very loud about things he doesn't understand. Zophar is staring at the ground, jaw clenched, as if he's trying to bite back every sentence he has ever spoken. You're still sitting there, and your hand is still at your mouth. Your chest rises and falls shallowly. Every breath tastes like ash and wind. The voice speaks one last time, and it feels like the air itself listens. Who has first given to me that I should repay him? Whatever is under the whole heaven is mine. Then the presence withdraws, not like a man walking away, but like weather moving on. The wind slides off across the land of Uz, carrying dust with it, leaving the dump to settle back into its usual stink. Flies return to their normal audacity. A scrap of cloth flutters down and lands near your knee. Somewhere far off, a dog barks, like it missed the entire cosmic event and is annoyed about it. You sit very still. Your body hurts in the same places. Your children are still gone. Your wealth is still ash in the past. Your skin is still a battlefield. But the silence now is different. It's not empty. It's full. You lower your hand from your mouth slowly, like your arm weighs twice what it did. Your fingers are filthy. Your nails are cracked. You stare at them as if they belong to someone else. Your friends don't speak. They can't. All their tidy speeches have been stripped down to nothing by a whirlwind and a sea monster they can't hook. You finally manage to form words again, and they come out quiet, not performative, not dramatic, just true. I know, you say, voice rough, that you can do all things. You swallow, wince, and keep going anyway. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. Your throat tightens. You taste salt now, and it might be sweat and it might be something else. You glance once at your friends, and none of them meet your eyes. They look like men who brought a cup of advice to a flood, and are now embarrassed they thought it mattered. You look back toward where the whirlwind was, where the air still feels different, like it remembers. You speak again, and your voice trembles, not with fear this time, but with the aftershock of being answered in a way you didn't request. You asked, you say, who this is that hides counsel without knowledge. Your lips press together. You nod once, barely. I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. The dump is quiet except for the small, ordinary noises returning. A fly buzzing, a scrap skittering in the breeze, the faint sound of distant life continuing as it always has. You sit there, a sick man in ash, feeling smaller than you've ever felt, not erased, not ignored, seen. You don't have the explanation you demanded. You have something else now, an encounter that has knocked the air out of your arguments and left you holding silence like it's heavier than words. And you stay there, in the settling dust, because there's nowhere else to go, and because the world, somehow, is still held together. Morning after morning, sea behind its doors, snow in its storehouses, wild things still running free, and your own battered life still, somehow, continuing. So after all of that, the wager, the losses, the boils, the friends, the whirlwind, you're left sitting there with dust in your mouth, wondering what you're supposed to do with a story like this, because you don't crawl out of an ash heap, half sand-blasted, covered in sores, emotionally flattened, and think, a nice little inspirational tale. You think, why was that allowed to exist in the first place? And honestly, it just sits in your lap like a hot stone. Start back at the beginning, with all that blessing. You weren't living in some shiny, marble-floored fantasy. You were living in a cloud of animal breath and manure steam, with servants shouting over bleating livestock, and a constant low-grade fear that one spark would light the whole operation. Job's wealth wasn't delicate. It was loud, heavy, smelly, and always one bad day away from becoming a disaster. So when the disaster hits, it hits hard on purpose. 4 messengers, one after another. No time to sit down. No time to swallow. Just the awful rhythm of someone sprinting up to you, panting, eyes wild, saying, "Everything is gone." And before your brain can even file that away, another one is already halfway through the next sentence, and it hits you in the gut. Sometimes life does not pace itself for your emotional needs. Sometimes grief doesn't arrive politely. Sometimes it stampedes. And Job does what people do when reality breaks. He tears his clothes, shaves his head, drops into dirt like the ground is the only thing sturdy left. It's messy. It's embodied. It's not a tidy, well-lit moment with soft music. This world isn't interested in pretending suffering is graceful. Then the boils show up, and the story gets almost offensively physical. You go from powerful to untouchable, from hosting feasts to sitting in the town dump, scraping your skin with pottery like you're trying to peel yourself out of your own body. That's not just pain. That's humiliation layered on pain. That's the social collapse that comes with sickness, where people look at you like your skin is contagious guilt. And right there, in the ash and the smell and the flies that have returned to their normal audacity, the story refuses to do the thing everyone expects it to do. It refuses to say, aha. And this is because Job secretly did something terrible. That's what the friends try to force. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar show up like a traveling group project where everyone is confident and nobody is helpful. They sit silent for 7 days, which is the only time they're actually doing the job they came for. Then they start talking, and it's like listening to 3 men read the same bad customer service script in different fonts, and you can feel what they're trying to shove into your lap. This makes sense if you deserved it. They want a world where pain is always a receipt, where suffering is proof of wrongdoing, where the universe is a vending machine. Put in righteousness, get out a good life. And if the snack doesn't drop, it's because you use fake coins. It's comforting in the grossest way because it lets them feel safe. It lets them say, that won't happen to me because I'm not like him. It turns Job into a warning label instead of a person. And the story drags that belief out into the sun and lets it rot. Because Job doesn't confess to secret evil. He doesn't suddenly remember he pushed an orphan into a well. He stays what he was, a man who tried to live with integrity and still got wrecked. And it refuses to do the thing everyone wants. It refuses to turn your tragedy into a neat little morality play. Then comes the part that feels almost illegal. Job's prayers. He doesn't politely request clarification. He doesn't give the kind of speech people embroider on pillows. He wants a court date. He calls God his enemy. He says it would have been better if he'd never been born. He doesn't disinfect his feelings before speaking. And the wild thing is, he's allowed to say it. Not rewarded for it, not punished for it. Allowed. The story makes space for a person who is faithful enough to keep talking, even when all the words come out sharp, and you learn fast. Faith isn't the same thing as nice. Your friend's theology sounds nice, neat, stackable, the kind of thing people say at funerals because it fits in the mouth. And sitting there in the ash, it sounds wrong. Job has angry, jagged, inconvenient honesty. And even when he overreaches, even when he speaks past what a human can know, he's still doing something the story treats as real relationship. He's speaking to God, not about God. Then the whirlwind arrives, and it does not behave like the ending to a debate. God doesn't show up with bullet points, no charts, no step 1. Here's what happened. Step 2. Here's why. You don't get the explanation you begged for. You get the presence you didn't know how to ask for. And it's not gentle. It's wind and grit in your teeth. It's questions that swallow your vocabulary. It's God talking about oceans like they have doors, about snow like it's stored in some cosmic pantry, about wild animals giving birth where no one sees, about Behemoth and Leviathan, creatures so far beyond your control, they make your complaints feel not stupid, exactly, but tiny. Not because your pain didn't matter, because you were trying to drag the universe into a human-sized courtroom and force it to speak your scale of language. That's what the whirlwind does. It doesn't explain your suffering, but it does destroy the lie that you are the center of reality. It drags your gaze out of your own ruined life and shows you a world that is vast, wild, and held together by hands you can't see. And somewhere in that, Job's posture changes. He doesn't suddenly feel great. His kids are still dead. His skin is still wrecked. His life is still a crater. But he's no longer alone with his questions. He encountered God. That's why the ending, when it comes, doesn't land as, yay, he got stuff back. The restoration is there, sure, but it's not the emotional center. It's not the point where you're supposed to clap and say, so it all worked out. Because it didn't work out in any way that puts 10 children back in the house they died in. The center is that moment in the ash heap where the silence changes. Job says, in plain language, that he had heard about God before, but now he has seen. Not with eyeballs, with your life, with your whole wrecked self. You get a kind of closure that isn't an answer sheet, something sturdier. They're saying, sometimes you won't get the why, not because you're being punished, not because you didn't pray correctly, not because you failed a secret test. Sometimes the why is simply not handed to you, but the silence doesn't get the last word. And that's why this book is so shocking that it even survived being passed down. It's too honest, too loud, too willing to let a righteous man scream, too willing to make the religious-sounding friends look foolish, too willing to let God show up without offering the kind of explanation that would make everyone comfortable. It's preserved because people needed it. People needed a story where suffering isn't automatically your fault, where bad advice is named as bad advice, where you can be furious and still be in relationship, where the neat sayings collapse and something real is left standing. So after the ash heap, after the scraping, after the speeches, after the whirlwind, you're left with a strange, steady resolution. Your pain can be real without being a punishment. Your questions can be loud without being faithless. And when answers don't come, presence still can. The dust settles, the flies return. The world keeps being enormous and strange, full of wild creatures you can't tame. And somehow, even in that, you're still seen. And the last line hangs there for a second. Not comforting, not tidy, just there. The kind of ending people want to tuck away where nobody has to look at it too long. You can feel why, just standing there with the dust still in your hair. This isn't the sort of tale that behaves. It doesn't tidy itself up, stack itself neatly, and sit politely on a shelf. It keeps the ash under its fingernails. You pick up the scroll, careful, because it's old and brittle. And it's like lifting something that still has heat in it. The ink is dry, but the argument isn't. You can almost hear the nervous throat clearing of someone who wants this story to be safer. Because what do you do with a righteous man who doesn't whisper his pain? You can't exactly trot him out for a cheerful little festival reading. You can't put his speeches on a decorative plaque without somebody choking on their bread. Job doesn't say, "I'm fine." Job says, "Explain yourself." And the room goes quiet because everyone knows what that kind of honesty costs. Somebody shifts on a wooden bench that's been polished by generations of anxious bodies. Oil lamps throw a greasy light, and the air tastes like smoke and old reed mats. A fly bumps lazily into the wall, like it has nowhere else to be. This is the part nobody likes. The story refuses to protect you from your own thoughts. You can feel people wanting to slide a curtain over the worst lines. The ones where Job wishes he'd never been born. The ones where he calls God his attacker. The ones where he's so tired he can barely hold his own name. Because if those words are allowed in the holy place, then your words might be allowed too. That's terrifying. You can almost hear someone grumble, "This is going to give people ideas," as if grief needs a permission slip, as if sorrow is sitting around, politely waiting for a sermon to authorize it. But the scroll stays open, and that's the strange mercy of it. Not mercy like softness, mercy like space. Space for the kind of faith that limps, space for prayers that come out ugly, space for the night when your mouth opens and only bitterness shows up. So the book remains, passing hand to hand like a stubborn ember. You watch it pass hand to hand in your mind, like a stubborn ember that refuses to go out. One night, it's being read in a house where the bread is thin and the worries are thick. Another night, it's being murmured in a corner where someone is trying not to sob loud enough to wake the children. Somebody's fingers trace the lines without even noticing. Their nails are cracked. Their hands smell like onions and sheep fat and whatever they used to scrub the pots. They don't have philosophical problems. They have actual problems. And Job meets them there sitting in ashes, still talking. Somewhere else, years later, you hear it in a different voice. A tired voice. A voice with sand in it. People who have been pushed around by empires and dragged away from home know exactly what to do with a man who says, "None of this makes sense." They don't need him to be polite. They need him to be real. The comfort isn't that everything turns out fair. The comfort is that the story doesn't call you faithless for flinching. It doesn't slap your hand away from the hard questions. It doesn't force you into fake gratitude while your world is still smoking. It lets you stand there and say, "This hurts," without immediately being accused of secret evil. And after all the arguing, after the friends with their confident speeches and their tidy little explanations that smell like fresh paint over rot, there's that other moment, the whirlwind moment. Not an answer, not a diagram, not a neat little reason packaged in twine. Just presence so enormous it rearranges your spine. Job doesn't walk away with an explanation he can explain to other people. He walks away with a meeting he can't unmeet. The kind of encounter that doesn't erase the graves, but changes the air you breathe around them. That's why this book kept getting copied, even when it made people uncomfortable. Because sooner or later, you become the person in the ash heap. Maybe not literally. Maybe you still have a roof and a bed and a cup that's yours alone. But there comes a day when life hits like those 4 messengers, one after another. No pause between sentences. There comes a day when advice feels like gravel in your teeth. There comes a day when you don't need someone to fix you. You need someone to stay. This story stays. It sits beside hospital beds and fresh graves and long nights where the ceiling won't stop existing. It sits beside the kind of losses you can't summarize without going silent halfway through. It doesn't rush you to a moral. It doesn't hustle you into a smile. It just hands you the words. you can be devastated and still speak to God. And if all you can do is speak in fragments, anger, confusion, regret, exhaustion, those fragments still count as speech. They still count as reaching. You look back at Job, and he doesn't feel like a distant hero. He feels like a man with dirt in his wounds and honest breath in his lungs. A man who learned that the world is bigger than his suffering, without being told his suffering was small. His life goes on after the whirlwind. The ordinary things return: meals, mornings, the sound of feet in the house. The loss doesn't vanish, but it stops being the only sound. And the story goes on too. It outlives the ash heap. It outlives the friends and their speeches. It outlives the questions that scraped at the inside of the skull like pottery against boils. The scroll gets rolled up again, tied carefully, set back in its place. The lamp burns lower. The room cools. Outside, the night keeps doing what night does: quiet, immense, unbothered. And inside, even if your answers never arrive, there is still a place where your questions can sit without being shamed. There is still a voice that once cried out from the dust and was not erased for it. The wind settles, the pages wait, and somewhere the story continues.